I'm Ramisa Tabassum Chaudhary, and we are delighted to have you all here. As you know, today we are going to have a seminar on the topic, Politics is Broken, How Do We Fix It? Arranged by Dhaka Tribune along with the support from Royal Norwegian Embassy, Dhaka. Without further ado, now I'd like to introduce our special guest, Mr. Aspen Victor Svensson, Ambassador of the Royal Norwegian Embassy, Dhaka. Our panelists for this seminar, retired Brigadier General M. Sakhawat Hossain, former Election Commissioner of Bangladesh, Mohammad A. Arafat, MP, Executive Member of the Central Executive Committee of Awami League, Mr. Tabith Awal, Executive Committee Member of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, Ms. Sharmeen Murshid, Election Observer and CEO of BOTI, Dr. Manisha Chakraborty, Member of Central Committee, Bangladesh Samajtantrik Dol, Bashod. And lastly, our moderator, Mr. Zafar Sobhan, Editor-in-Chief of Dhaka Tribune. Firstly, I would like to invite our special guest, Ambassador of the Royal Norwegian Embassy, Mr. Aspen Victor Svensson, to come to the podium and share some words with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists and members of the audience, not least Mr. Reman Sobhan. An honor to see you, sir. What a lovely morning it is, isn't it? And here we are again, teaming up with Dhaka Tribune for a seminar on the political situation in Bangladesh in the run-up to the election. I sometimes get the question, why does the Norwegian Embassy do this? Fortunately, much more frequently, I meet people who come up to me and say, thank you, Royal Norwegian Embassy, for doing this kind of event. But I think it's worthwhile to stop for a moment and answer that question of why we are doing this, an embassy. To answer it, I think the first thing we need to analyze is what exactly it is that we are doing. Clearly, a foreign embassy should not play a role in an ongoing election campaign in another country. Are we interfering? No, we are not. What we are doing is to assist Dhaka Tribune, a highly respected newspaper, in providing a venue for an important discussion in a crucial time. A venue and some stimulants, food and drinks. But the discussions themselves are not our business. The discussions are for the panelists and for you, the audience. An election, in particular a national election, is a big deal in any country. Indeed, it is a big deal in Bangladesh. For most of the time I've been in Dhaka, which is now more than 3 years, the now imminent election has been one of the hottest topics of conversation. Why is that? I think it's quite simple. This country has a somewhat mixed track record in holding elections during its 52 years as an independent state. Still, it has seen remarkable development, both in terms of economic growth and in human development. It is a respected member of the family of nations based in the UN Charter. Also, it has a constantly advancing economic clout and is increasingly an integrated part of the global economy. I think Bangladesh now needs to show that its democracy is functioning and that it's able to hold a good election. We all know the buzzwords: free, fair, participatory, peaceful. My foreign minister, who visited Bangladesh last year, put it succinctly: an election seen by the world to be free, fair, and participatory in accordance with international standards will open new doors for Bangladesh in the coming years. It's that, really. Bangladesh needs a good election to reaffirm its democratic credentials. The people of Bangladesh must give a mandate for the next 5 years. And we, the so-called international community, are Bangladesh's friends and want to see Bangladesh succeed. Enter Norway, you might say, doing what Norway does: bring parties together, provide an arena, serve food, and then leave it to the parties to enter into discussions and conversations. Get them to talk with and to each other, and to try to find at least some common ground. As you know, it's not the first time we do this. And I suspect it may not be the last. We have to keep on working. In the peace process in faraway Colombia, where Norway was a facilitator, it took 10 years to reach a peace agreement. Here in Dhaka today, we don't have 10 years, as the election is just around the corner. Knowing that, I'm very encouraged to see the broad spectrum of people gathered here today, representing most of the stakeholders in the process. It's quite a gathering of eminent persons, and the fact that they are all willing to come here and take part in these discussions is a good sign, as I see it. I hope today's event can nudge at least a few issues in a good direction. I wish you all a fruitful morning with good discussions, open exchanges, and constructive approaches in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. Now I would like to hand over the floor to our moderator to begin the discussion session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us this morning. Many thanks to His Excellency the Norwegian Ambassador, whose opening address I think has done a good job of outlining the issues at bar. And of course, thanks to the Embassy for supporting this roundtable. As he mentions, they are merely a facilitator. The discussion here is ours. Many of you may remember that we convened a similar joint program last year, which was very successful. In fact, we wish to build on that success here. Now, elections are around the corner, and the political atmosphere has heated up considerably. But we're not here to talk about the elections, the upcoming elections alone. Our remit is both to do with the elections and also beyond the elections, now slated for January. And we want to take this chance to step back and look at the bigger picture when it comes to politics here in Bangladesh. Now, some may take exception to the formulation behind me and say that politics is not broken, but I feel that that is as good a word to use as any. Let us look at where we are with respect to the election for starters. The ruling Awami League has categorically stated that holding elections under a caretaker government is off the table, while the main opposition BNP has equally categorically stated that they will not come to elections in the absence of a caretaker government. We appear, at least for now, to be at an impasse. Where there is no political consensus, or indeed any hint of political consensus, it leads to the inevitable conclusion that something is very wrong in the body politic. It was not always this way. Since the restoration of democracy, we've had 4 elections that have been without serious controversy and have generally been accepted by all as free and fair. 1991, June 1996, 2001, 2008. The last 2 elections, unfortunately, have been mired in controversy, and this is why we are at the impasse we are in today. But beyond answering the question of how we get to good elections from here, I would like us today to consider what functional politics might look like moving forward, regardless of what happens in January. What can we do? What reforms can be considered? What policies change so that we do not find ourselves here ever again? This is, I think, the crucial question. Even more crucial than how and on what terms do we hold the upcoming election. The question should be, what then? And I would suggest that this is a question that needs to be answered regardless of how the election issue is finally decided. And the issues raised and answered proffered should ideally be the same regardless of what happens in January. We could talk about putting far-ranging reforms in place that would make Parliament more functional, that would provide a bigger role for the government, and have questions of serious constitutional reform put on the table. One thing which is clear to me is that the current situation is unsustainable and simply unequal to the task of providing Bangladesh with the polity needed to thrive in the coming decades. I believe that everyone on this panel wants the same thing. Everyone wants free and fair elections. Everyone wants democracy in Bangladesh to flourish, and everyone wants a functioning and functional political system which delivers the kind of governance Bangladesh will need for the 21st century. The panelists have already been introduced, so I shan't go over their biographies again. Will be very simple. We have 2 hours. The first one will be a discussion among the panelists. In the second hour, I will open it up to the audience for their input and questions before returning to the panel for the last word. The idea is that this will be a conversation, not just the panelists. I believe every person in this room, and possibly the vast majority of people in the country, want the same thing as I have mentioned. We want good elections, but more than that, we want a functional polity and a political system that delivers the best possible outcomes for the country. I'm going to try and call on everyone, but of course, since time is limited, I can't promise that I'm going to get to all of you. And I feel that this should not be a partisan issue or necessarily a partisan discussion. We're looking for a system that works regardless of whoever is in power and who's in opposition, a system in which there can be full freedom to debate the issues of the day, and where there is room for the opposition and civil society to come together with the government of the day to ensure that the most effective policies are enacted and implemented. I don't think anyone would suggest that we have anything like that system in place today. So the question we're trying to answer today is, how do we get there? How do we get from A to B? We know where we are. We know where we want to get to. What is the path there? Sharmeen Appa, let's start with you. You can open the batting.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and salam. The first discussion we had a couple of months ago, we sat here and we talked about common grounds. And I was thinking about that. Common grounds build. Common grounds lead to consensus. It's a roadway to consensus. And consensus actually helps us to build society. And if we look at it the other way around, if common grounds break apart, I mean, if consensus is not achieved, then we have a situation which is contrary. What I'd like to begin with is a small reminder of what politics is. And I find that the most known definitions and most ancient definitions still perhaps do well for our understanding. And the role that politics, according to Aristotle, the role that politics and political community must play is in bringing about the virtuous life in the citizenry. And I emphasize on the word virtuous. And Plato said, political order which promotes social peace in the environment of cooperation and friendship, in various different social groups, each benefiting from and each adding to the common good. This is just to remind us that politics is perhaps one of the most profound ways that we can address society and that we can serve society. The thing that I would like to say here is today, where do we stand? I wanted to say a word on one of the leading ladies, women leaders of Awami League in the stars, in the horizons of the Awami League horizon, enlightened women politician. She, Nurjahan Murshid, had a quote for politics. And I thought, for the first time, I'd like to bring that forth because it's so pertinent. In Bangla, it says, Shustho Rajniti, Shustho Samajer, Onnotomo Pradhan Purbo Sharto, which means sane, healthy. I had to use Shustho both for sane politics. Sane politics is a precondition for a sane society. And that যে কোনো প্রকারের একনায়কত্ব তা ব্যক্তিগত হোক, দলের হোক, শ্রেণীর হোক, পরিণামে সমাজের গতি রোধ করে. She reminded us, any kind of totalitarian, authoritarian rule that is personal, that is party-based, or class-based actually obstructs the healthy growth of a society. I leave it at this as a reminder that a whole generation of people believed that politics was a way to achieve freedom, to achieve liberation, and a way to serve humanity. It needed to be Kollanmukhi. Now, these words are extremely important in today's politics that we are experiencing. It's just to remind us how much we've moved away from those concepts, those commitments, those spaces. Where we stand today, let us not mince words. Perhaps politics is not broken, but certainly it needs repair. What are the elements that's driving our politics? What is the character of our politics today? Some things that we notice, here's a point. In 1954, we had only 4% business people in our parliament. In 2018, Shujon's statistics show that we have 61% businessmen in politics. What does it mean for politics? In my mind, it means politics is commercialized. Politics is commoditized. Politics is a game of profit and loss. And here, we have already hurt the purpose of politics. And we know what that has done for all of us. The other factor that I would like to draw, and I mentioned just certain elements of the politics that we've observed. I've been observing elections, but I would like to go on a more beyond elections and elections. If we look at what's been happening in the recent history of the last decade or so, we see that as we develop, as the curve for development rises, the indicators, the curve for democracy actually moves downwards. Human rights condition moves downwards. I think these are very important elements. And what entails a desirable, virtuous citizenry if the basic parameters of development of human rights are questioned. Now, the major political parties that have been contending over the past decades, and ever since we had a renewal of democracy in 1991, there was much hope in the political parties that they would nurture democracy. At last, Bangladesh would see the nurturing and the flowering of democracy. But that was not to happen. Some of the characteristics that we saw subsequently was that all these elections, except perhaps for 1991, all these elections, and I would like to bring to point 2001, preceding 2000 elections, there was horrendous violence. Post-2001, there was horrendous violence. And those violence, there were 26,000 perpetrators identified. And simply thousands of people were injured. Political workers. So there's always a backlash. And I'm talking about a vicious cycle of violence and vengeance. In 2001, the opposition today was in power. And we saw violence. And we saw justice not done. We saw that perpetrators were not brought to justice. This was the environment. Now what happened? In 2008, the people of Bangladesh gave a strong verdict against that government. That was in 2001. It voted against that government. Why? because they did not accept the malgovernance, the violence, the crimes, the impunity with which this was done. But Bangladesh had already acquired a political culture. In 2008, we held a very peaceful election. Mind you, all peaceful elections in Bangladesh must be noted as a relative phenomena. And in post-2008, the Awami League government came to power. They were in opposition in 2001. And they came to power. And subsequently, we've had this government in power for the past 3 terms. And what have we found? We have found violence did not decrease. There was a terrible backlash. Those who violated them in 2001 were being violated by the powers today. And the number is not small, it's huge. Now, everything has a consequence and a flow, and there is a cause and effect. Now, what we are living through right now is that, as Zafar called this, politics is broken. And I would say one of the reasons why politics is broken is because the vengeful politics vicious cycle that we've fallen into. And today, even if I don't quote the statistics, I would like to say that 2014 and 2018 elections have really marred the process of democracy. And 2011, doing away with the caretaker government was the fatal blow on democracy. In spite of the fact that the court said this should continue for 2 terms, 2 more terms, the government in power absolutely ignored that. And today we are at the same place, only the actors have reversed. Then BNP the power in opposition did not want the caretaker government, but the Awami League agitated for years on the streets. And we were able to put into place the caretaker government system. But today the situation is completely reversed. Now the opposition, which is the largest opposition is BNP, the opposition demands the restoration of the CTG, and the party in power refuses, citing constitution. Now we all know that one of the fundamental basic elements that saved this country from crisis after crisis has been those moments, and Sir Professor Rahman Subhan is sitting in front of me here. He has been in part of that. Remember the post-Ershad period? All the political parties actually had gotten together, and Ershad was toppled. All the political parties in 1991 had come to a consensus, and that's why that interim government happened. And one of the best elections happened in Bangladesh in 1991. So what are we talking about? The political parties, those in power, don't want the caretaker government because they do not see it as a way to return to power. And oppositions do not want elections under ruling parties because they do not see it as a possibility to come to power. So where do we stand? We stand at a crossroad. And what would be the answer to this crossroad? The conflicts that are arising out of all this. We are all aware of the repressive measures. The more the government will be in a state of fear of losing power, of backlashes. Mind you, backlashes is something I want to emphasize. It is a historical phenomena, and backlashes is a reason why political parties fear as the way they fear. That's one fear. And the oppositions who struggle to come to power because of poor democratic means of transfer of power fear. For example, presently the opposition fears that if they cannot come to power, then they will their very existence will be challenged because they've been out of power for so long. Now, this is the conflict that we're in. Now, what do the people of Bangladesh want? Zafar already mentioned, the people of this country want a smooth transfer of power, peaceful transfer of power, no violence, no deaths, responsible behavior from their political parties, commitment from their political parties that they will not be violent. People of Bangladesh want a free and fair election. Now, are the political parties ready to deliver? They were not ready to deliver in the past, and that's why we had to take these extra constitutional means. Today again, is the government willing to deliver? There is lack of confidence in the government, and the government must recognize that. It must recognize it. Why? Because it needs to do its soul searching. The opposition, the behavior of post-21 government and the party in power needs to do its own soul searching. Why did it lose in 2008? Where does the present government stand today? At the end of the day, all of us are very worried and concerned whether there's going to be that free and fair election. So I will stop at this, Zafar, because I think I've taken a lot of time. But I think the answer that we can think about, and the whole House can think about, and we can think about, the point where we were able to overcome these great crises are the moments where we had consensus, the moments when we were able to sit together and come to a point. Now, we've got to find a win-win situation. The opposition is in fear, the government in power is in fear, and in fear, you always do the wrong things.
Thank you, Sharmeen Appa. Brigadier General Sakhawat, if you could go next. You're up to bat.
Thank you for inviting me. We already heard from Sharmeen Murshid, absolutely detailed what she has to say, and she said what it has to be said. So therefore, I won't take much time. We're giving me 7 minutes. I believe that I would take 4 to 5 minutes, if maximum, and leave it to the other speakers who would speak much better. My first question is why we have come to this situation where EU refuses to come. I don't know what Americans would come and IRI or NDI would say. It remains to be seen. And then every day we hear about the visa restrictions. And very recently, one of the very prominent journalists said something more is coming. Why we are like this? No other country in the world so far, in the name of democracy or whatever country it is, has been through like this much before the election even announced. I think Bangladesh is the only country, and the other day I said I feel very ashamed being thinking that I'm a citizen of a country which I was very proud of and proud I am. But then, if I go abroad with this passport, somebody will say, what happened to your country? Why you have? In saying that we don't care and we don't what it is, it's not a good thing to even discuss that the country, some of the countries have imposed such kind of restriction. Well, with that, if I start, the first question to me when I ask myself, why are we here in this situation? Because of the faulty democratic process, at the same time a very faulty political system and a political culture. Our political parties have not practiced democracy, whichever party it is, whether it is left, right or center. There is, first thing is that they don't practice democracy. How would they practice democracy outside? Now there is a question, why do we need a caretaker government to hold a free and fair election? Maldives did not have. One can say this is a very small country. Maldives had a very contested election where who all were behind. But nobody could say that there was any manipulation in election. It was very smooth, 2-round election, and there were two powerful of course, the influence. So if the Maldives can have, even Nepal, for example, which has fought 30 years of civil war, and they were tearing each other, they have subsequent elections where there has been no point, nobody has pointed finger. The elections were marred. Bhutan had election. And of course, the Pakistan is going to have an election. You may like or you may not like, but Pakistani elections have never been put into question so far. The politics might have been, but not the election. So why it is in Bangladesh that we, being neighbor of one of the biggest democracy and participatory and liberal democracy in India, we are like this? This question must be answered by our political people straight, without any blaming each other. Now coming down to what are we looking at? The Excellency Ambassador has said three things: free, fair, and participatory. What does it mean? What do we mean by free? Free means, if I quote Churchill, he said there's a small little man goes in a small little room with a small little pen and ticks on a small little paper, and he comes out and he goes to the home, goes to sleep. That's what is free. But do we have free elections so far? Somebody said only 4 elections. After that, did we have any free election? Did our voters could go and vote freely? No. When I go out in the market, everybody says, sir, we have not voted since 2008. And believe me, sir, this is I hear every day, every minute and every hour. Why it is so? People have not been able to vote. We have progressed, definitely, but we have not progressed in political arena. Therefore, votes have not been free in last 2 elections. I don't want to go in detail. It's recorded in black and white. Any one of you will read Bangla book by Mr. Mahbub Talukdar. It's very clearly written what all has happened in 2018 election, which was supposed to be participatory election, but it didn't. So free, when you say free, the voters have to go to the voting station and freely vote and freely come back, not to be dictated where to vote and how to vote, not to be intimidated. What do we see? We see people standing in front of the voting center and telling you can vote or you cannot vote. We call it new term. I have not heard this, and I don't know whether Election Commission takes note of it. I told them to take a note of it. That is center pahara dicche. That's nowhere written in the law that you are supposed to compose guards to guard the center. That's the job of the Election Commission. It's not the job of any political party. That's what is happening. Therefore, when we talk about free, it's not free. Voters cannot vote, they cannot go, they go through filtration, who they are going to vote, and they are prevented in 3 to 4 circles. And the candidates, they can't campaign. In 2018, I have observed, sorry, I'm saying this thing because I know a little bit the mechanism, a little bit of election, not much. 5 years that I have spent, I could try to understand what it is. The candidates cannot fairly campaign. Either they are prevented by the opposition or they are prevented by the government machineries. Participatory, when we talk of participatory, these days I hear something new. I mean, I think we're all hearing the new concept of politics, that if it is 60% votes, it is participatory. The other day, our President CEC said, and I could not take the time to ask him, he said, if the 70% vote is there, why do we need people to say that the parties came or not? I asked him, I told him, I said, if a major party does not come, sir, I'm talking about 35 to 40% votes not coming. Now you can make it 100%, 15% you can make 150%. So it's all count, there's nothing else. and a seal by Election Commission. So therefore saying that if the voters vote for 70% participatory, no sir, that's not what we say under the international standard. It has to be participated by eligible political parties of the country willingly. So we didn't have participatory election in last two of the elections, they were prevented. I'm just saying why we are here, why have we come there. And then free, fair, participatory, fair. Fair is when the votes are translated into the result and has to be a fair result. The voters should be satisfied that I have voted Mr. X and it has been counted for Mr. X. Now imagine in last, I'm sorry, I didn't bring the statistics. One of the very popular candidate of a party who has been polling all the time, most of the time, over 50% of the cast vote or 40% of the cast vote, and the winner has been getting about 60, 70%. In the last election, the same gentleman, I don't want to name, the same gentleman gets 2,000 votes, and his opponent gets about 2 lakhs vote. It doesn't sound to me to be free and fair, and the vote has been fair. So when we talk about free, fair, and participatory, I've already talked about participatory, I've talked about fair, now I'm talking about fair. It has to be fair result. The results are not fair. Well, if somebody may say that I'm talking about theory, that's what it is. It's not theory, it is practice. In Bangladesh, there has been elections which have been less controversial, and it was accepted internationally. So why we cannot have another election? The reason is that we have polluted the entire system, and there is lack of faith. We don't have faith, we don't have institutions. I will just give one example and finish. We were in kind of a sort of dilemma when we were holding an election in Narayanganj. And the Constitution 126 says that government has to provide all the help that Election Commission wants. We were not. We were helpless. Yet we had to go through the election for many reasons. I can't explain here, it will take a lot of time. Who could have rescued us? Judiciary. But they didn't come up. Judiciary is the main strength of Election Commission. When we talk about independent Election Commission, it is not suspended in the vacuum. They are supported by the institutions, and unfortunately, our institutions have not been able to grow, or we have broken our all institutions. Therefore, today, what it is today and what is coming tomorrow, we don't know. But we are in a kind of a mess. That's what I can say. If there is no free and fair election accepted, as the Excellency says, on the minimum international standard, I'm afraid we will see many more disasters in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Sakhawat. I think it's also important to remember in politics in Bangladesh, we tend to think of it in terms of Army League and BNP, but of course, there's much more to politics in Bangladesh than that. There are many other political parties. There are many voters who are represented. Sharpa, if I could go to you and bring you into the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dhaka Tribune and Norwegian Embassy for arranging this seminar and talk. First of all, I would just start with the topic, which states that politics is broken. I will humbly disagree that politics is never broken. What we are seeing in Bangladesh is a broken system which might lead to a troubling transition of the powers from one party to another. But this problem has deep roots in the political commitments. We think that commitment to people has been broken. The commitment to people in mainstream politics, it has been broken for long. And that commitment has been greatly replaced with commitment to power. our politicians, they are very committed to stay in power. They are very committed to be in power. But the commitment to people, which should have been the center of politics, that has been the problem of our politics for long. And if we talk about democracy, yes, election is a vital part of democracy, but it's not the only part. And the problem lies if we see at the other parts of democracy which should have been established for long. Already there have been talks about the judiciary, the independent judiciary. We see that recently a Chief Justice has been appointed who has received very festively, he has been greeted by the national ruling party MP, and we see that he has been gifted a sword from the DB police chief and many other things. So we have seen lots of examples like the judiciary, which makes people, which creates a distrust in people about independent judiciary working, and this is only a little example. There are many examples of the justice system working in Bangladesh which tends people to have this type of distrust. And then again, if we talk about democracy, yes, we have seen the election commission in 2018. It was a historical election. It was not a controversial election. We would say that it is, the government has made history. The election commission, we usually see elections happening in daytime, but it happened in night. So it's really very historical, and maybe internationally it's a very prominent example. So then again, if we talk about the other pillars of our liberation war, we fought for this country with some dreams. We fought for this country with some dreams of emancipation. Democracy was one pillar. And what about the other pillars? If we look at the pillars like nationalism was another dream, we see that the surrendering to imperialist aggressions, it has been part of our politics for long. And recently, we have heard from a very prominent leader of the ruling party that many compromises has been done under the table, and everything's settled, and the imperialist powers are all with the ruling party, and nothing has to be of our worry. So we think that this submission to imperialist has been quite evident than any other time, I think in the recent election times. And we think recently the Tista, you know, the Tista barrage, the gates, the most friendliest country to Bangladesh, they have opened the gates of friendship and causes us to be flooded. The floods of friendship is happening in our northern region, and it has been happening since our independence. We have seen Farakka, we have seen Tipaimuk, and now we are seeing Tista. And this friendship has been flooding us in many ways. We have seen trade deficits, we have seen this type of many imposed pacts. We have seen rampals happening. So the nationalism, the emancipation, that way it's also, we have seen that the dreams of our liberation war has been demolished for long. And the secularism, the dream of secularism in our liberation war, it has been greatly replaced with fundamentalism. We have seen that our Prime Minister has gladly received khitabs like Qawmi Janani, and there have been many compromises which has led a rising Islamic fundamentalist mentality throughout the country. And also the promise of socialism, it's out of the book. The planned economy is out of the book, and there has been a free market economy which has made the country a kind of lawless country. When we see the markets, it's like the people have been suffering to even put simple foods to their plate. We have seen the prices of eggs rising to 15 taka, one egg. We have seen the prices of everything that's going out of people's bounds. So when we talk about like democracy, when we talk about the dreams of our liberation war, we think that this should be also discussed, that what is the situation of the other situations that is connected to democracy. So we have seen that the country has been moving towards the anti-people policies for a long time, and this election, we think that this election the government is very motivated to hold the election in their own way, and we are also seeing some king's parties, though a queen is ruling the country, since despite that, we are seeing that there are some parties which might participate in the election, but will the people participate? We don't think that people will participate, because the people's pulse throughout the country is against another election like 2018. It's not only the voice of some few opposition parties, it's the voice of the people. They are against this type of one-sided nighttime or daytime government designed and government handled elections. People are against it, and people will rise against it if this type of plan is happening. So what can be the solution? We think how do we fix it? If we talk about the elections, if we try to fix the election system, we think that, of course, some kind of interim government should be there to take care of the elections. And we are from Left Democratic Alliance and from our party, Socialist Party of Bangladesh, we have been talking about this type of government. We have been claiming in another interim government to take care of the elections. And we also think that the election system should be changed. Our elections are greatly manipulated by money, muscle, and media. And also, we think that election system, like our Brigadier Sakhawat was talking about Nepal. What is the election system in Nepal? They use proportionate representation. They don't do like us, first past the post, the system we use. So we think that proportionate representative elections can be a solution to this greatly manipulated elections. And also we think, like, if we look at in 2008, Bangladesh Awami League got 48% of the votes. In 2001, BNP got 40% of the votes. 1996, Awami League got 37% of the votes. In 1991, BNP got 30% of the votes. So no party really, a lot of other opinions of the other people, the other votes, that were not represented in the parliament. So majority government was never formed, and the other parties which might have been represented in the parliament, they were not present. So we think that proportionate representation can be a solution, a long-term solution to this totalitarian regime, which we have seen that it has grabbed power so tightly that the people's voices are not heard. So we think that proportionate representation can be a long-term solution to this type of totalitarian regime and this type of fascist rise that we have seen for the last 15 years. So that's what I want to end my conversation with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. I very much also appreciate the fact that you focused a lot on how to fix things, and I think some of your suggestions are certainly grist for us to discuss further. Now, Tabith, you have 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll listen to Arafat afterwards.
Thank you. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum to everybody present today. I'd like to start off by sincerely giving my thanks to Dhaka Tribune as well as the Royal Norwegian Embassy for giving me the position today to be on a panel today. With me on the panel as well as in the section of guests, there are extremely important individuals as well as eminent citizens of Bangladesh. So I really hope I can live up to any expectations, through what I'm about to say. Politics is broken. I mean, that is the theme of the moment that we're trying to discuss, or trying to come to some sort of consensus to. Something is definitely broken. The state and the way the state is being managed is for sure broken, and that is why the Bangladesh Nationalist Party a few months ago came up with this 31-point demand or solution to repair the state. And we've actually called it that. It wasn't a manifesto, it wasn't a memorandum. It actually said, how to repair the state again. And we had 31 points there. I'll come back to that in a few minutes later. But what is politics? Something else I also want to mention. Politics, I don't think, is really broken. It's a choice of how we want to engage in politics. Today, we have two biggest parties in Bangladesh, along with many smaller political parties. And by the way, I do respect all parties who are registered or not registered by the Election Commission, and even all individual people who wants to participate in any election in Bangladesh. We feel that the Election Commission and the Constitution of Bangladesh should always be out to protect everybody and encourage them to participate. With that mindset in mind, we have a politics now of one group who is wanting to advance democracy, and we have another group who's trying to advance autocracy. Now, even if we debate on the democratic process or the autocratic process of the upcoming election, it's really hard to debate on the way the governance is being run in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh's governance, democracy has no longer any space left, and rather it's the autocratic system that is 100% taken over. And this is, my examples are endless with media reports or even rhetoric that comes from a lot of the ruling party individuals. Now, how do we go beyond this? So first of all, as we were all discussing, that, the problem with politics, another problem that we face is that power has become an addiction. Now, how do you get rid of addiction? The first way to get rid of addiction is you have to admit that we have a problem. Until we admit we have a problem, we can never overcome whatever it is we're trying to solve. So I request everyone, especially the ruling party or the government of today, as well as the eminent panel member, Mohammad Arafat, to look into this matter. That can we come together and first agree that we have a problem? Once we agree together we have a problem, we can find endless solutions. We've done it in the past, and I'm sure we can do it again. Now, how do we get to problem solving or fix politics? So last time I was at the similar event of Dhaka Tribune and also assisted by the Royal Norwegian Embassy. There was an eminent spokesman at that seminar, and whose words I've actually taken to my mind and heart. Her name was Miss Sharmeen Murshid. She mentioned one word over and over again, which was listen. We must listen to each other. So just kind of backtracking away that, I would like to be in a Bangladesh where I can speak. And I know there's many data out there. How much time do we get allowed to speak on social media? How much time do we get to speak on electronic media? How much time I'm getting today in today's panel to speak about? But that is not speaking. Speaking is when I can speak without fear. Speaking is when I can speak my mind. And speaking is when someone's listening to me. Just, talking to thin air is not going to help us out. So as a group is allowed to speak in Bangladesh, another group should come forward and listen in Bangladesh. And these are the ways that I feel that we can maybe not fix the problem, but definitely get closer to a solution than we are today. How do we speak? We have a lot of political rhetoric, but I just feel that, or BNP feels that, the way we speak about things is also extremely important, as well as what we speak about. There's a big tendency in our political structure and culture, and I know at least a lot of young generation feels very strongly like that whenever we make an example, the opposite defense is always bringing something in the past, always bringing an excuse in the past. So I would like to put the big elephant in the room out there, and before Mr. Arafat makes these examples, I'll just say it out there that we have a bad election, but let's not make an excuse not to have a better election by talking about what happened in 2006, by not talking about what happened in Magura, by not talking about what happened in 1988. Things were wrong, we admit it, but we need to move forward from it. And our discussion should always be forward-looking and not backward-looking. What else is backward-looking? For example, economy. The state of economy right now is in dire straits. But yes, we do have one or two indicators such as the GDP, which is looking good, but that does not justify frauds in the financial sector or embedded corruption in the banking sector. So just because you're growing somewhere doesn't mean you can now loot the rest of the country. That is not acceptable. That is not going to be acceptable. And human development indicators. We've had many good indicators, especially child mortality rates, our increased age of our life expectancy, but that does not excuse or justify human rights violations. We cannot accept a country where we have extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, And after these things happen, the culture of denial rather than a culture of investigation and coming to what is, the actual truth. Because everything together is politics. This is why I made a very roundabout, conversation on many topics today. It's all politics. Politics is about using the resources of our great nation, especially its people, and taking us forward collectively. We'll have problems, we must learn to solve them. We will have solutions which may not work, we'll have to learn to think differently. But we cannot only make excuses about the past and keep going back to the past. We cannot be hostages for that. And because of that, again, I repeat, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party has come up with a very, very forward-looking and reality of today, a 31-point charter to repair the nation. Why doesn't democracy work in our governance? Democracy does not work in our governance because we have used as a political tool every institution that is supposed to help repair democracy. Politicians will always disagree. Some politicians will take advantage of the situation. But it's the running autonomous constitutional institutions of any country that helps us to come back to track. Today, we have probably come to the lowest level of the one institution we had a little bit of faith in, which is the judiciary. Judiciary is now not living up to its standards, whether it be in politics, economy, civil, or criminal power. The Election Commission. If we just listen to the Election Commissioner and commissioners' wordings for the past, almost 1 year that they've been, as the Election Commissioner, everyone's totally confused. What is it that they want to do? Who are they working for? What is the ultimate objective? Institutions such as media houses, always a victim of atrocity, abuses, black laws. Media houses are not politicians. Media houses are not politicians. But they seem to have the equal number of cases and deaths as many political opponents or activists do. Human rights organizations. Human rights organizations are probably the real opposition to bad politicians or politics gone wrong. But even our human rights organizations are now being criminalized, and they're not being allowed to do the good work that they should be doing. And these are some of the examples I'm giving of how we can really repair our politics by actually repairing, fixing our institutions and allowing them to flourish as they can and as they should be. Speaking, listening was one part I just mentioned. Now we have to ask the right questions. What are the questions? We are talking about many forms of election governance. We're talking about governance itself. We're talking about a lot of cases against us, opposition especially. But hardly anyone is asking about the people. What do the people want? We're speaking for the people for sure. We all take pride in saying how we present X number of individuals and we are the most experienced person there is to talk about the people. But no, not a single one of us can say that we are engaged with 180 million people and we know the pulse of especially the 100 million youth who are under the age of 30, what they are talking about, what they want to hear about, and where they want to go forward in the next phases of their life. So talking about the people is should be the utmost centerpiece in any future political debate. We have to put people in front. All the laws that we are designing in the recent past, especially the Cybersecurity Act, are designed for power, not for people. Again, if all political parties come together and put people first, and every comment we make and questions we ask is to ask, how does it benefit the general person? How does it benefit the general public? I think we can repair our politics, and we can definitely take our nation forward. When it comes to elections, and this is not about national elections, people have just lost faith in the system. No one knows if they can vote or not. Many people couldn't vote. No one knows once they vote, if they can, will their votes be counted or counted in the right way, or will the results reflect what the majority of people voted? And this is the same situation. It's top down. National elections, local government elections, bar council elections, journalist society elections, Bajar committee elections, or even labor union elections. So we have to come to a consensus where the people fundamentally should be allowed to vote without fear and have the trust that the results reflect what they have voted in the majority. Now, when we hear talks like, if 1% people vote, it's a legal election, we're not here for a legal election. We're not here for a legal and legitimate election. We're here for an election where the people will give the mandate to the individuals that they want to govern them in the next 5-year cycle. When we hear rhetoric or comments like, bringing people to the voting booth is not our headache, is not our problem, then what is your headache? What is your problem? Constitutionally, you will take every benefit out there, from a car to training fees to the prestige of your chair, but constitutionally, you will not respect the very people that the Constitution has been designed for and designed by, practically speaking. So, as long as we talk about the people, and Bangladesh Nationalist Party vehemently is only speaking about people, especially now than ever before, that is the way forward, and that is how politics needs to be repaired. Not only can be, needs to be repaired. Now, why do we get into politics? 2014, 2018, you rig the system, you deny that there's rigging in the system, you have debates, we have court cases which go nowhere, we have media debates. But how does it benefit anyone if once you make it to power, let's say you do, then why can't you lead by example, especially to the illegal members of parliament's majority that I'm referring to? How do you justify that you want to be in a position of power where you claim you've been represented by the people, but you spend 100 crore, which is approximately about 4% of parliamentarian time, for not having quorum? That what is more important than showing up to parliament on time if you claim to be a parliamentarian? But Bangladesh in this 4-year cycle so far has spent 100 crore taka. We're lucky because of dollar devaluation, it seems less than what it should be. But it is not expense that we are willing to make as individual taxpayers and citizens of this nation. How do you I know how you can, sorry. Why do you justify spending 19% of parliament time, the time the parliament was in session, which equals to 506 crore taka, on only patronizing the current prime minister in the chair? There are other places to do that. There are other cheaper ways to do that. But we have now spent 20% of parliamentarian time and money on just patronizing an individual or not showing up to parliament. Now, after all this rigging and manipulating the system and giving the constitutional excuses, you still don't do what you are meant to do or you claim you want to do. That is not good politics. So politics definitely is broken and it needs repair. That was another example that I wanted to share, with some, concrete evidences. Now, Bangladesh National Party, it may not resonate with everybody, but I can state with 100% conviction today on this panel that the aim is not to only to come to power. The aim is to empower the people of Bangladesh. And through that empowerment, of course, we hope to form the next government. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party for the past year has been peacefully, non-violently protesting in the streets of all over Bangladesh. Not a single accusation can come onto the political party where police keeps harassing us, saying you cannot have permission because of this problem, that problem, but not a single accusation can come with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party through their shamabeshes, protests, rallies, gatherings. Gatherings have topped over 1 million people, has created any sort of undue acts of criminal behavior or unsocial behavior. Whereas we have become victims of police violence, of Awami League cadre violence. I myself am a victim of Awami League violence, sitting in front of you today, still fighting for democracy and in a non-violent manner. We have lost 27 lives in just 1 year to police gunfiring. Has there been an investigation against those? No. Has there been any cases being able to file against them in police or in the court system? No. That is not good politics. That is not justice. And these are the fundamental denials of justice and rights that leads our nation backwards, which we don't deserve. Bangladesh National Party continues to hold their protests against this autocratic regime. Bangladesh National Party continues to uphold their demand for a caretaker or a neutral government system in the coming days. We are holding our protest despite launches, ferries, buses, trucks, cars being banned on the roads. We are holding our protest despite internets being shut down during big shamabeshes. And we'll continue to do that because our demand solution, we find, is the caretaker system in Bangladesh. Now, many other countries don't have this system, but many other countries don't have 105 million, especially young voters, who don't trust their system. Many other countries don't have the follow-up institutions broken or the judiciary broken, where after there is a debacle in the electoral system, there is a place to go to. There is a place of redress. We don't have that. So caretaker system gives us that. We have gone through 3 versions of caretaker system: 91, 96, 2008. And every time the care system has given us a democratic elected government and an acceptable election. So since it's been done before, we insist on doing it again. Because this is what the people believe in, this is what the people need, and this is what the people want. And I'll stop right here for now, and I'm open to the discussions and debates that's going to follow this panel. Thank you everyone for your time. As I said, there's many important individuals, eminent citizens here today, and I thank you for allowing me to speak in front of you.
Thank you very much, Tabith. So, Arafat, I think the other 4 speakers have spoken. It was respectful, I think constructive, and as far as this portion of the proceedings go, you get the last word, so I'm sure you have plenty to say.
Thank you, Zafar. Good morning, all of you. Well, because there have been a lot of emphasis given onto listening, so I actually wanted to listen.
Thank you.
And I was very attentive, and I was trying to truly understand, the inner voice of all those words that's been mentioned. I could actually go on and counter some of the accusation being made against the government and the Awami League as a party, but I don't want to go to that path today. Many of the things been said not based on factually correct information that I can give clear explanation with particular references. But I think then it will just get into another debate of typical political show, So I don't have this mindset today to get into another talk show kind of a situation that you say something, I just go ahead and counter and, go on with that. And also, as Tabith mentioned, that we have the habit of going back to the past, so he wants to look forward. Actually, before even he mentioned it, I was thinking today that I'll be saying things based on something what we can do in the future. I don't want to go back. But the problem is, in politics, whenever you are trying to accuse the current government on certain fronts, then to answer it, you need to also go back to say what was our experiences in the past. So very relevantly that comes up, but I'll try to restrain to go back to the past today. And also, some of the things that Tabith said, and I'm sure he said this on behalf of his party, and he is representing BNP. So some of the things seems to be a bit too good to be true for me. I think that all problems will be solved if all those things that he said, if it is possible for BNP to actually follow. Even today, right at this moment, everything is solved, I can guarantee you that. Because it's so, in many ways, some of the ideas seems to be not very practical or fitting to our reality. Seems very ideal. But still, if something you need to set a sort of a goal, no matter how it seems to be very untrue, but you can strive to get to that goal, you can achieve quite a lot. So from that perspective, I still want to appreciate what Tabith mentioned and what they want to be. They want to empower people. They don't want to go to power. I mean, who'd believe that? Any party, one of the biggest contender in the power would want to do that, But I want to believe that BNP and Tabith believes that, truly. But anyway, so what I want to say today is, yes, we can see there are certain problems in our politics, in our electoral process, in the system, of course. If you did not have had any problem, then I think we would not have to sit down today with this discussion. And with the election, and 3 months down the line, we still have a bit of uncertainty whether or not one of the biggest party in the opposition, like BNP, they're coming to the election round. I was talking to Tabith earlier on, and he said that they're probably not going to come. Well, that is also their official position, that unless they get a quote-unquote the caretaker system, BNP don't want to come to the election. So my opinion will be very simple, and I'll be very honest and candid. I don't want to, as I said, get into the so-called typical political debate, but I feel genuinely that we need to have a long-term solution to these problems. I mean, we need to have this honesty and genuine intention to sit down, engage ourselves, politicians and other thinkers in the society, with a goal to find a long-term solution, not an ad hoc, short-term solution that will only target it to the next election. I want to look beyond, because I think once and for all we need to end this issue or the debate about election every after 5 years. That does not make sense to me. And unfortunately, I don't see any initiative from any corner, even from the opposition, with an intention to propose something that can give us some kind of, long-term solution, something that can, create a solid foundation for the long term. We don't see that initiative or any kind of ideas or any discussion at all. We are always, sort of engaged into addressing just upcoming election. Before 2014, we talked about the 14 election. Before 18, we talked about 18 election. Now we are talking about election 3 months down. But why don't we talk about all the elections to come as long as Bangladesh exists? Why can we not think about something, a solution that can fix it once and for all? Something that we see there in India, in the neighboring country, in Norway, in other Western countries. Why can you not have it? Brigadier Dr. Sakhawat Hossain mentioned that even in Maldives or in Nepal, they have gone over this, issue of election controversy and all that. So we should be able to do that. So where are those discussions? So I think instead of sitting down and speak based on rhetorics, we should have a genuine engagement with a real, some kind of walking session or something, and based on facts, put your facts together, see what is the situation of the constitutions, see what are the laws that's been enacted in last 15 years to strengthen and improve the electoral system, recognize that, and also talk about how else we can improve the system further to give it a solid foundation. So let's be futuristic. Let's not talk about past. If you're talking about last 15 years, I'll go even further back and say something else. So can we put everything aside and think about not only the next election but the election beyond? A proper viable solution. I don't want to think about caretaker government. Not because Awami League don't want it, but because it is not a permanent solution. What if we go for the caretaker government again? We did it before in the past, but did not work out. Failed. We go for it next election, again another how many more elections under the caretaker government? How are you going to do that? And the system of the caretaker government, somehow in the beginning it helped, but it also destroyed the idea of civil society in our country, unfortunately. And I'll tell you why. Because this a section of the civil society, not everyone of course I'm saying, started thinking that through this process we can go to the power, at least for 3 months. We can become prime minister or the ministers and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, all those people, when started becoming, without knowing it, the part of the power contender, and then that has destroyed the very idea of civil society, what's supposed to be objective and neutral. So like in America, Jeffrey Sachs or Noam Chomsky, if they want to be the president, they know they have to come through the political process and will have to become the president. But in Bangladesh, during the caretaker government system, many people in the civil society, they knew they don't have to get into the political process, can still become the chief advisor or the prime minister. So that's why what I think is, let the civil society play their role, let the politicians play their role, and let's come into a consensus, all of us together, where we can see a long-term solution. That kind of direction I want to see. So I want to put aside all those, the debates that we have between us. We have debates with BNP and other political parties, civil society. We have agreement and disagreement on different issues. Not that we agree on everything. We don't disagree on everything either. There are many common grounds that we can start working on and see how we can expand that area of common grounds. But also at the same time, sometimes it seems to be very unkind when it comes to, criticizing the government in many ways. Well, of course, government is the party which is actually running the country, and in the government, the incumbent is naturally supposed to be the target of criticism. But also at the same time, if the government is being criticized with false information, then they also have the right to counter back and clarify. And when we do it, then sometimes that is treated as if we don't believe in giving the civil society the space. So I think this engagement should also be, sort of constructive from both the sides. That's what I believe in. And when I hear things like that in democracy or human rights or the freedom of speech, in all those areas, we have only gone downward, I don't agree with that. What I would agree with, that we have lots of room for further improvement, but we have gone downward? No. We were much worse in the past, especially after 1975 onward. We saw the military rule. We saw so many bad things. Extrajudicial killing, human rights violation, crossfire. This is nothing new in this country. But if you go by the number, all of these numbers has gone down. Statistically, if you look at it with the hard facts, then that will tell you the exact picture. But anyway, again, I don't want to go back to that. I was speaking to Mr. Majumdar. He is here today, few days back, and we do talk sometimes because he takes a lot of interest, the election politics and all that. And we have been talking about long-term solution. Long-term solution, right? Exactly. That's why I referred to you, that I have been telling many people, even though I represent Awami League, and I have been representing not only when I became an MP or I joined in the Central Committee, even before that, I always supported this party. In fact, I came back to Bangladesh in 2005 with a goal to serve this party and this ideology. And that's why I have joined in, and I consciously support this party. We have our political position in different issues, but we also want to open up ourselves to engage with everybody else in the society. And therefore, even in the personal level, I do try to reach out to many of our friends in the civil society. Zafar is also a good friend, not today, we go back long way. I mean, 18, 20 years. Yeah, exactly. So we do always talk, discuss, debate, argue. But I believe, even with Tabith, I actually like this man. He's a wonderful person. And we always have a very healthy discussion whenever we bump into each other, we meet and all that. So the thing is, let us talk, let us discuss, let us listen, and let us set a goal. How can we achieve a long-term solution so that we can stop discussing about election once and for all? So it is fully established into a system in a way, after 5 years. We don't have to worry about it. With a small joke, I want to, finish this part of my speech. That I was telling the other day, that if we also knew if we also knew that if we lose in the next election, we can again come back after 5 years through a process of free and fair election when BNP is in power, then in this election, we from Awami League would not put an effort, all-out effort, of course in the due process, I'm saying, to win back again. Because given the economic situation globally, the challenges are so high, we would rather want to lose in the election, let BNP go win, and, you know, face the music of the global situation. And they would be very unpopular in 1 or 2 years' time, we can come back again. So that would have been our strategy. But we know, deep in our heart, if we let it go, BNP goes to power, forget about free and fair election again, from the past experience that you have. Therefore, we want free and fair election and are putting all the effort to try to win in a free and fair election in the next election. Right? So, the problem is still there. The deficit of trust from both the sides. So let's try to build this with the help of our friends in the civil society. And let's look forward to getting some kind of a long-term, permanent, solid solution for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arafat. I think I agree. Success for us would be when we're no longer talking about elections. Elections are just something which happen every 5 years and we don't have to discuss them. Now, initially I thought we'd have another round with the panelists before I open it up to the audience, but we have so many eminent people in the audience who I think have such a lot to contribute to this discussion. I think I'm going to open it up to the audience. I want this to be a conversation. We have our panelists, so feel free to ask questions, make comments. Do keep it short because we don't have a great deal of time, but I think we can stay another hour or so. So who would like to open up? Could I get Bodhibhai, why don't you start on this?
Thank you. I think it was a breath of fresh air listening to our three politicians listening and long-term solutions, and I really congratulate you for what you said today, and I hope that this is the beginning of a better future for all of us. Listening, discussions, dialogue, and solution of our long-term problems. Anyway, so as Arafat was saying, my young friend Arafat was saying, we have been in conversation. We are in discussion several times about a long-term solution. And in fact, from Shujon, we have been promoting that idea for a long, long time. We have been promoting the idea of a national charter, a long-term solution of all the issues that we confront, which not only the election, but also fixing the democracy and building democracy and building the state, as Tabith said. And we have been working on it for a long time. And in fact, Arafat would remember that on 10th of last month, we held a dialogue, basically on long-term solution. And we had a list of 17 or 18 items. We feel that that could be the agenda. That could be the possible agenda for discussions, dialogue. Dialogue, then discussions, and solution. And last couple of weeks, last several weeks, we have been holding dialogue throughout the country on these issue, long-term solution, and signing of a national charter. And we held these gatherings, meetings in all the divisional headquarters, and bringing people from adjoining districts. And one thing I can say, and which will probably may not surprise you, and in those gatherings there are people from all political parties. There are civil society representatives, as well as business people and young, old, women, men. And almost unanimous, there was unanimous voice from everybody that there should be dialogue, সংলাপ, সমঝোতা, সমাধান. Dialogue, then what's the next word? সমঝোতা and সমাধান. So dialogue, coming to an agreement, and solution of the problems. And this, people wanted, almost everybody wanted unconditional dialogue, unconditional, no caretaker or caretaker, unconditional dialogue. And tomorrow, by the way, we will be presenting these, some people from the field will come, from the grassroots will come. We will, what we found, the recommendations of those dialogues we held around the country, tomorrow in Siddhap Auditorium at 10 o'clock, tomorrow we'll present those, and you will find it interesting. And then I want to go back to politics. Politics is broken. I was thinking about it. Politics is broken. What is politics anyway? What is politics anyway? The politics has become a trick in this country. Politics has become a tool of manipulation. And in fact, it has become a dirty game. It has become a dirty world. So I think why did it happen? Politics is not that. Politics, in my view, is a process. Is a process of dialogue, discussion, solution, not turning it into a blood sport. In fact, we have turned it into a blood sport. And so in turning it to a blood sport, we carried out a demolition derby, destroying all the institutions, values, norms, and everything that this country was founded on. So I think if we are to get out of that thing, that kind of dirty politics, Rajniti karen amar sathe. That kind of politics, if we want to get out of it, then I feel that we need a new generation of leaders. We are seeing some of them, and also a political settlement, and a long-term political settlement, and also making politics for the people, not for the coteries, not for the parties, not for the few. So if we can have a new generation of leaders like we have been hearing from today, and also have a political settlement, long-term political settlement, maybe we can get out of this mess. And I must say, as a part of this destruction of these institutions, some of the vital institutions, election commission, the judiciary, the law enforcement agencies, and the bureaucracy, they are in pitiable state. And our former election commissioner is here, and I don't understand when this present election commission talks about election. I don't understand whether they understand the word election. Election means choice. If you look at the law dictionary that is used in law, what is it called?
Black's Legal Dictionary,
yeah,
I think.
Black's Legal Dictionary, or even any other dictionary. Election means choice. People having choice. We are having either black coffee or white coffee. That's a choice. If you don't have choice, there is no election. And also they are talking about, oh, their constitutional mandate. Election means free and fair elections, and which will take our democratic process forward. And if there is no contest, there is no election, and they are not fulfilling their constitutional mandate. And I don't understand. I hope they will come to their senses and will hold a free and fair election. At the same time, solve the problem long term for the long haul. Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
My name is Rana Mohammad Sohail. I am a retired major and also an MP from Jatiyo Party. And I thank you, Zafar bhai, whom I know for a while, for inviting me for this. And I would like to, before I say anything, I would like to offer my respect to our personality here, Dr. Rehman Sobhan. I haven't had a chance to meet you in person. I feel honored to be in this room with you. So thank you very much for being here. And so I'll just not take much time. I would like to look at this topic here. And I was thinking that, okay, so if politics is broken, maybe it is, perhaps it is, because otherwise why are we here? What are we trying to do? There is some issue that we need to address, which is why we are here. And how do we fix it now? Now, what is it? What is wrong with us? I think if that's the question that we are trying to ask ourselves, that what's wrong, then what is it that we need to have? And I was thinking that is perhaps before we start to look at our recent or immediate issues, maybe look into ourselves. And I recognize that in order for us to be in politics, we ought to have humility. Humility is essential because it allows us to look into our souls, and that's where it all needs to begin. Because until we understand and have the humility to understand ourselves, we couldn't really ask the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And therefore, if we have the humility to ask ourselves, then we need to ask ourselves, what am I doing here? And if the question is that we are here to do something good, then what is that good that we're trying to do? Now, yeah, it must be something that we are trying to do for the nation. Now we are divided into nations, so instead of society, I'd like to refer it as a nation, because politics is bounded by the boundaries of a nation. So we'd like to do good to our nations. A nation is a compilation of people, of course, and so we'd like to do good to our people. And if Plato said that the politics is something which benefits people, and then if Lincoln said that it must be also done by the people and for the people. So we basically know what is it all about and what is it that we need to do. So by looking into ourselves and looking at the history, we know that if we are here to do good, then this is how it needs to be done. Now history has examples that there doesn't have to be one single system. So I don't want to question democracy, but it need not to be the only single way. I think the intent, good intention, to do good to people, it actually can allow you to do good to people, even if the system isn't democracy. Now, collectively, as a nation, we have agreed that this is our path, that we have to do it in a democratic way because we call ourselves People's Republic. So we have chosen the form in which our politics and our government must consist. And therefore, if it is Ganaprajatantri, then it must be participatory by the people. And if that's what needs to be done, then as Mr. Majumdar said, that it has to be on the people, and they must have the right to choose whom they allow to rule them or to decide for them or to make policies for them or lead the nation to prosperity. Because in the end, everybody is looking for prosperity, and the American Constitution said that the one single thing that they allow is the pursuit of happiness. So everybody wants to be happy. We all want to do. And then the politics or the government, our intent, our purpose is to provide that happiness to people. Now, happiness is a broad term. It encompasses everything. So somehow we have to make sure that all the elements of happiness is assured, provided, guaranteed, sort of thought about at least by us, so that everybody can be happy, and not that we'll be fully successful. It's the effort that counts, really. If the intention, the willingness to do it. Now, are we there? Is our intention or purpose to come into politics, to serve the people, to make sure that everybody is happy? If that is not the purpose, then there is something wrong right there, and that's where we need to look at. I mean, I don't want to even look at the election, because the election is only a process. And I don't even want to talk about the going to power. That's also just the process. Now, if we have the intention or the purpose is corrupt or inappropriately positioned, then what's the use of the process? The process wouldn't do us any good if we walk into the process with malintention. So therefore, if we need to fix it, we need to fix our purpose. Unless you have the purpose right, then we wouldn't be able to do anything good. No matter how even if the election process is fair. There have been examples in the world that the government which came in proper election, in a democratically conducted, fair and free election, but eventually led the nation to a different path where the nation really wanted to go to. So the process cannot ensure the prosperity and the freedom and the sort of happiness of the people or the nation. So therefore, it is the root is really hidden in the intent. And if the Akbar the Great has been a king, now he somehow acquired this title, the Great, you know. I mean, he was not elected for sure, but did he have the purpose, the wisdom to lead the nation to prosperity? Surely he did. and that's why he earned him the grace. So it's not really the process, it's the intent. And the intention is properly placed, then I think we could fix it. And now how do we fix our intent? I mean, that's a good question. We probably need, first of all, we probably need to buy a mirror and then carry it around so that we can look into the mirror frequently, so that we can know that this is where the problem is and this is where the fix is hidden in the mirror. And thank you very much for giving me this chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ashik, I think you're next up to bat.
I am with Policy Research Institute and also with Awami League, so I don't want to play neutral. The issue is
disclosure always.
The issue is, we say sweet things in such air-conditioned rooms, but and we can say nice things, and it's good that we can still sit with each other and say nice things to each other, listen to each other, play the civilized game. But unfortunately, what we say here is not going to shape the real outcome unless we address what has led to whatever decay we have seen in politics. At a choto kotha boli, in say I'm from Bhola, and when I speak to a BMP worker or Awami League worker, the first thing they asked is electioner party ami elakaye thakte parbo. And it's across the board, right? They are worried, both sides, that will they be able to stay. That fear is real, and no matter what sweet words we say here, no matter what 31-point Tabith says here, I know he's well intentioned, but nobody finds whatever promises we make to each other credible. And that's the problem. The promises we make to each other are no longer seen as credible. And we keep saying, let's not talk about the past, but then when we don't address the past, if you want to solve slavery, you have to accept the injustices happened under slavery. If you want to solve apartheid, you have to accept what the apartheid regime did in South Africa. There's some recognition must happen. And has that happened across the aisle? I don't think we are honest about that. We can use such forums to look good. And absolutely, we can say 31 things, we can say empowerment, we can throw all the nice words. But without addressing the real fear of retribution in politics, which is a real problem in Bangladesh, without addressing the intensive zero-sum game that is a part of our political fabric, that it's not only I win, it also leads to your annihilation. I remember a picture, and that's a big picture. You talk about, Dr. Muzumdar talked about political settlement. I mean, no picture says it all when I saw the picture of Sheikh Hasina going to Tariq Rahman's wedding. If you see that picture, with all their past and all the animosity and all the grievances, that was a huge step. And yet some things happened later that those settlements were broken down. And are we truthful about that? I don't think we are. And I think when we are not truthful about what has happened and why those settlements broke down, we can't fix it, no matter what sweet words we say in such insulated environments. Two more things I really want to make, and it's just a humble opinion. Let us stop talking about US visa sanction and say how it insults us. It is really rhetoric. Biden went to Vietnam after G20. Vietnam is a one-party state with no media freedom. So let us stop saying, one of my good friends, I just came from London, he said, well, your sanctions will all go away if you join the Indo-Pacific strategy, right? So let us not use those words to say that we need a flag from someone else. And the final point I really think is, I really want to ask my friend Tabith here. I know he's a good guy and I really like him, we are good friends. But can he genuinely tell me who is the prime ministerial candidate of BMP? One. And two, can he tell me our position is election under the current government, their position is election under a caretaker government, but if the government offers them a compromise, such as an all-party cabinet, which was proposed in 2014, that we take 20 cabinets, you get 20 advisors, will you come to election Can that compromise, will that compromise be seen in positive light? I'll be happy with an answer on that issue. That has been tabled. Kader Saheb, no, Kader Saheb has mentioned it. Fakrul Saheb has rejected it when it was proposed. So let us see. Let us hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ashik. I think you've given us a lot to think about. And Tabith, when we come back to you for the closing statements, please do address those issues as well as anything else you would like to speak about. And I think, Ashik, I should say one thing I'm pleased about this discussion is it hasn't actually devolved into discussions about sanctions and things like this. And I think it has stayed on a very productive level, and also we are looking at the big picture rather than the small picture. So I appreciate that from all the participants, including the audience who have participated. I think Naveen, you're next.
Naveen Murshid, I'm an Associate Professor of Political Science at Colgate University. In the interest of listening and consensus, I think what I'm hearing is the need for credible institutions, right? And Mr. Arafat, we too do not want to worry about elections every 5 years. So what do we do? What kind of institutions can we create? Are you proposing that will actually ensure that we don't have to worry about this? And to Mr. Tabith, should we see the 31 points as election mandate? Should we actually be expecting movements towards, say, proportional representation if you were to come, or actually amendments that would counter centralizing tendencies in the Constitution and so on? So how are we to see the 31-point demands in the context of the elections and the election mandate that we expect? I will keep it there. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Nagesh Rao. And in some ways, I'm not very qualified to speak here. I'm from India, and I wanted to, rather than speak about Bangladeshi politics, I just wanted to sort of offer a little corrective, because I heard from some of the speakers about the great liberal democracy that's across the border. And I want to remind people that, just recently we've had this massive raid on journalists and academics and, writers and so on of NewsClick, which gives us, the reason I bring this up is that India's image as a liberal democracy kind of remains untarnished despite a lot of illiberal authoritarian tendencies emerging from within. So that authoritarianism seems to be able to manage the perceptions. If you can manage the perceptions of the international media and so on, you can create a sort of veneer of democracy which masks over a certain kind of authoritarianism. So if there are reforms and changes, institutional changes and so on, that could guarantee a more democratic system, yeah, what would those look like? And how does one hold governments accountable to the truth when perception management allows them to sort of deny authoritarian policies, so yeah, that's just my thought here. Thank you.
I think we have Fuad Abdullah next. I'm not sure.
Hi everybody. Thanks Dhaka Tribune and Norwegian Embassy for hosting the dialogue. Yeah. It's sad that we didn't have local that many platforms to do that. I would rather disagree and challenge the title itself. And to me, it's a kind of a misnomer to suggest politics is broken. Rather, I have some profound questions for the audience and the members of the panel. Whether we ever had a politics in this country, whether we have any political party, in fact, with my profound respect to the major political party leaders and colleagues, every time we see it, both of the parties are ingrained in the past and history. Awami League cannot come out of their contributions or engagement in 1971. BNP cannot come out of the image of Ziaur Rahman and the period. So every time they try to do something, they have to put forward those many pictures. I think many of our foreign colleagues sometimes get surprised to see so many pictures on the billboards. And who is congratulating whom, and who is saying what, because of the pictures get confused. So still, we could not come out of the image of the past, the image of the individuals, the image of the period and the epoch. Whereas the politics is about the future. What I'm going to do for tomorrow, what I'm going to deliver next year. My experience observing the Western politics and living in London for 18 plus years, I have been involved with the liberal politics there. I have seen there is no connections, no discussions whatsoever with the persons, who is the leader. It's all about policies. What are you going to do? What are you going to do for the local constituents? How I'm going to be challenged? What the other party has said? What policies we're going to challenge on the other side of the aisle? So that's what we have been missing for last 5 decades or so. The missing people element, the missing future element, until and unless we come out of the past, until and unless we come out of worshipping peoples like idols and the great leaders of the past, we cannot build our future. And lastly, what I feel the parties trying or failing to negotiate is leading all of us to a Pyrrhic victory. And those who know about the Pyrrhic victory, in that war, even the winners lose. We lose as a nation, we lose as a country, and for sure the political parties as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zafar. Great program. I have just 2 or 3 points. I would like to focus on how to fix it. The first point that I would like to mention is that, for example, we have 300 MPs. We should have a program where every year when the MPs are brought in to the parliament, they have to give the to the public a complete financial statement, and every year that has to be made mandatory in the parliament. So there has to be made a law in the parliament. So that's point number 1. But they don't give it to the. It is mandatory, but they don't give it to the public. We don't get it.
You can say that it's not made public, but it's very much mandatory before they file the nomination paper.
No, not every year.
Every year. Okay.
Every year.
All right.
That's very important, because
that's a different story.
That's very important, and not just that. It has to be with their family as well, because these days people can hide their money through their other people. It's not regarding Bangladesh Awami League. It's regarding any parliament person. Okay, so that's point number 1. The other issue that was not reflected in this program is dynastic politics. We have to start thinking beyond dynastic politics. We have family-based politics in this country. We have to move away. So the large majority of the people are completely fixated on two-party system. So why is it happening? Because over-glorification of these people. We need to move away. People are coming with new political parties. For example, I represent a political party. There are many new people coming in. So we have to create a space. The people of Bangladesh needs to look into those. That's point number 2. The other one is, I think, very, very important for a long-term fix. We have to start educating the citizens of the Bangladesh that what is really your role as a citizen, not just voting after every 5 years. So what is democracy? How can we build democracy? What is budget? How can we develop economic systems? And certain budgetary funding should be there to create a political mindset of the citizen. Not everybody will go into politics, that's for sure. But people need to know what politicians do, what is the role of politics, what is the role of a good citizen in a multi-party political culture. So I have a few more points, but I don't want to waste anybody else's time. So thank you very much. Inshallah, we'll talk further. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Ami Alisha Pradhan. I'm the founder of Hernet Television. It's a television work for women empowerment. So I'm not going to ask a question because I understood the politician often answer what they want you to hear. So I will just share my remarks. Its politics is broken, so let's discuss, or as a youth representative, I'd like to share how I see it can be fixed. So political broken landscape is not just in, it's a global phenomenon, and I think Bangladesh didn't fall far from the tree. But the basic necessities of the citizen, when it became a luxury, I think it's high time we actually raise our voices. It's like you giving me diamonds and a Rolls Royce, but you forget to clothe me, so we don't need that. And my request would be to focus on 3 things, because I know it's, I do not want to offend the government or the opposition or the mighty Western power. So my focus would be on our education, health, and the justice system. If this can't be ensured with proper fairness, I do not think how the country will change for better in the future. And putting the right people in the right place. I think this is where we suffer the most, all this, the red tape, the nepotism. So if you have the right people in the right place, a lot of problem could be eliminated. It's not about me supporting any political party or anything. And also the dependency of trade for only few countries. Like, I do not understand why we have to import $12 billion from India when we export just $1 billion. So we need parity and trade equality. And everyone was talking about past and future. I would like to reflect on the past of the Western also. We are always talking about Western interference. And if we look back at the history, often the interference also led to more bad than good. And certain example could be Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, or Ukraine for that matters. The opposition people or the current government people, I ask you, when you go to the Western seeking salvage, support, to fight or join your cause, don't you know you would also have to give something back? I mean, these are the reality, and I think we as a citizen, we may not be able to change much, but if we understand this, there is a sanity. We will not go like mad. There is no way we can completely obliterate like no nepotism, or there will not be gray sides to the politics. There will always be. Like, look at Biden. Recently, he built the wall that Donald Trump actually vouched for. And what was his reason? Because they can't shift the budget. So this is Biden or the Western for you. And so my only question is to the people, how much you are willing to actually fight for your own country, or the youth involvement. The biggest demography in our country is the youth, and what our government or the opposition is actually doing to untap that. I can give a small scenario, very interesting. Since I work for women empowerment, I was trying to get women ministry, the Ministry of Women Affairs. 100 times I failed. I can make a short film on the mighty ignorance of that ministry. Or in 2015, when I proposed an app, something similar to Nogot, you guys all know, I was running after ministry to the people, to the investor, but no one gave that importance, or like felt like, okay, she's a young girl, the youth representative, give her a chance. So I think a lot potential you have within the country. Our youth, our people, we have amazing ideas. Please be more open to that. And I still believe either the government or the opposition is still more focused on their agenda before the people, though they say it's the people. But there is always a path to redemption, and we citizen, we are ever people. If you move towards that path of redemption, of bringing back what this glorious country, Bangladesh, that need, we will be with you.
Thank you, Alicia. I think it's very important to listen to the young people here. So I think we've got Umran and then Prince, and then I'll finish with Professor Sobhan.
Thank you. So I'll just make a short observation, and that is that we have a very large young demographic, and perhaps in the next election we can have more of that demographic represented in Parliament, and we can have a more focus on better quality lawmaking, such as in parliamentary committees and private members' bills, perhaps, because I think both our parties have been doing that for a while, and both our parties have a very long history, and our politics goes back over a century. I think the first legislative council in the subcontinent was established in Bengal. So we have a long history to draw upon. So I'm hopeful that we will be getting gradually to a much better political situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Man. Prince.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mohammad Prince. I completed my bachelor from China, currently studying University of Dhaka. And I'm the convener of newly formed student organization, Bangladeshi Students Party, BSP. I'm really glad to ask a question to Mr. Arafat that as a representative of new generation, exactly when we can vote. Thank you.
Easy enough. And Professor Sobhan, you can have the last question from the floor, after which I'll give it to the panel to make your closing statements, and then we'll call it a day. So.
Thank you. I enjoyed listening to the speakers. And what I asked myself at the age of 88 is that what I'm hearing today, would a similar discussion have been taking place throughout my trajectory of my public life? Certainly one issue would have been on the table, going back to the early 1960s, during the days of the Ayyub regime, and that is having an appropriate system for having free and fair elections. Because the Ayyub regime solved that problem by creating a system known as basic democracies, which restricted the franchise and did it in such a way to ensure the perpetuation of the Ayyub regime. And this narrative continued through the 70s and the 80s until the caretaker system of 1991 emerged with the downfall of Irshad. Now, I think the best person who had an idea about what to do about the system was Sheikh Hasina herself, because what she had learned, not just from her own experience in politics through the period of the 1980s, but also presumably from the politics she learned at her father's dining table, was that at the end of the day, no ruling party can be guaranteed to hold a free and fair election. The reason for that is the nature of the system, which is already broken, which is the compulsion of the ruling party, and this doesn't begin with the Awami League today, but which goes back all the way to the time of Ayyub, and through the Pakistan history as well as through our own history, it goes back to a compulsion on the part of the ruling party to actually interfere with the functioning of the machineries of governance to begin with. So that prior to getting into a question of whether you are going to the system of elections that you wish to have, you set about progressively politicizing the administration. Now, here this has been a continuous process which began long ago but became worse with each successive period. And even after you moved into a system of relatively free and fair elections, the politicization process continued. And the reason for this again is what is technically known in political discussions or political theory as path dependence. The compulsion of a particular regime when it comes into power not to reverse the wrongs of what its predecessors did by institutionally correcting it, but by perpetuating that system. Because the way in which the psychology actually works is that this regime came and manipulated the placements in the judiciary by putting in people who are sympathetic to their politics. They did the same with the bureaucracy, they did the same with the law enforcement agencies. So what would have been expected of them is that you come in and you change this system and you try to create a meritocratic system in which the best people are based there, and this is how you differentiate yourself from the malgovernments of the outgoing government. But what you do is precisely what the outgoing government has done. You put in your judges, I am now going to put in my judges. You put in your vice chancellors, I'm going to put in my vice chancellors. You set about determining both the recruitment and promotion in the law enforcement agencies as well as in the administration. I'm now going to put my own people there. So what then happens is, in regime after regime, a system of path dependence leads to a progressive moving away from a system of independent, credible governance within the system. So can you imagine if you are now looking at a situation today through a process which has probably been in the works, at the very least we would say from the beginning of the 80s? There will be nothing left of a working system at that point. And so in those circumstances, how exactly are you going to conduct a free and fair election? Now, Sheikh Hasina understood this very well when she, in fact, launched her campaign for elections under a caretaker government. She herself had been a victim of this process through the BNP period, first under Zia, then under Sattar, and then under Irshad. And she knew that this was a system which was not workable. She did not basically need the Magura election to get her to change her mind, because this was already as part of her thinking. I can speak on this personally, because in spite of the fact that they lost the election in 1991 under the Shahabuddin administration, they did not say that it was a bad system. They wanted the system to continue, and she wanted it to be institutionalized. So this was a process which led to an extensive campaign throughout the country for over 2 years. It led to the Awami League members of parliament and all the other members who were associated with them, incidentally, including at that time the Jamaat-e-Islam, all then collectively resigning from parliament, I think more or less at the end of 1994, believing that unless you created and generated political pressure, you could not have this system. And when this system came about, it was seen to be working reasonably well. Obviously, there were flaws, and when Hasina was re-elected in 2008, she wanted the system to be reviewed. You will remember that a parliamentary committee was set up under Suranjit Sen Gupta, in which all the senior members of the party were members. I think the BNP were also invited to be members, but I suspect that they didn't actually sit in the committee. I'm not sure why. And extensive consultations at that time were held with civil society. Amicus curiae of the top lawyers took place in which their opinion was sought. And virtually the collective voice argued that there were problems which needed to be fixed, but the system should continue. And so the report which was given by the parliamentary committee to the Prime Minister, which was a collective voice of the parliamentary committee and civil society, actually suggested that there were some things which needed to be fixed, but the system should continue. So why I point this out is that this was a system where there was, for a period of time, a consensus, a very rare occasion in Bangladesh politics, where people believed that a system had flaws which could be fixed, but you should carry on with the system. Even the Chief Justice, in his judgment, had made the remark that there were flaws in the system because, according to him, it led to a departure for a brief period from democracy, but in order to address the practicalities of it, it should continue for 2 more terms. So up to that time, there was really no problem at all for the perpetuation of the system. Now, for whatever reason, decision was taken to do away with this system. Now, the problem, therefore, was not corrected because the source of the problem, which originally inspired the caretaker system, had continued to be aggravated and perpetuated, which was the partisanization of the whole system of governance. And unless you can actually ensure that you get back to a system of an independent set of institutions, which are institutionally mandated to do their job as it was intended in the Constitution, you are going to have a serious problem in carrying out a credible election. And that process has not changed. I mean, had, for example, whoever was in power, the Awami League, spent the last 2 terms correcting the malfunctionings of the institutions of governance and strengthened them and made them into genuinely independent meritocratic institutions, they would have had a much stronger, credible position to then say that, okay, not only have we corrected the systems of governance, but we have also made sure that the Election Commission itself is a credible, independent institution. And that itself would have been an argument. But since no real progress was made over here, you are essentially where you were virtually when you go back to the original campaigns against the demand for a credible election system, and that goes back even to the 1960s. So this is the point I make. The last point I wish to make is the issue of the broken element of politics. Once we had a working system of free and fair elections, you should keep in mind that actually both Pakistan and Nepal used this as a role model to try and remodel their own electoral systems. And all of us used to go around the international circuit boasting that Bangladesh had actually created a workable system of holding free and fair elections. And as I said, Pakistan and Nepal, who participated in many of these elections, then did a bit of path dependence following where Bangladesh actually left off. But now what actually we discovered is that even when you had free and fair elections, it didn't mean that you had a working parliament. And here again, path dependence came into play. The BNP in its first tenure under Khaled Azia was not at all inclusive in the way Parliament functioned, so that half the time was spent boycotting that parliament. Awami League, when it came to power, inspired path dependence from the BNP. And this has been perpetuated through the 4 elections held under the caretaker system. So that Parliament itself, which was meant to be the central part of a system of accountable democracy, ceased to become a workable institution. Last point I wish to make. Who are we electing in Parliament and what is coming out of their presence in Parliament? As was pointed out, I think, by, who is it, by Sharmeen, you have now got a Parliament largely constituted of businessmen. Now, there's nothing wrong with businessmen getting into politics. What happens is when you become dominant players in the political system, and when politics itself and Parliament itself becomes instrumental in perpetuating someone's business fortunes, so that the whole dynamic of politics then becomes not public service, but material advancement. And this is what has led to a major breakdown in the system. The people who are participating in politics now, their primary mission is to see this as an instrument of wealth advancement. That is why, whether you like it or not, a very important institutional development was not only that wealth statements of all people in Parliament be filed prior to competing for election, but for those who are elected, it should be in fact then mandatorily made public throughout their 5-year tenure. And you should then have built-in laws about conflict of interest. As far as I know, only one member of Parliament, Hossain Chowdhury, attempted to table a bill for institutionalizing mechanisms where conflict of interest could be effectively challenged, and you could not use your position to seek advancement in your business fortunes, but this was not tabled and this was never discussed. Now, if you have a system then where people's livelihood, then you get into a very different set of ground rules. And this goes down not just to the parliament, it goes down to the union parishad, where whoever is elected then is using their position to seek advantages from the 500,000 crores of public expenditure which take place. So that from the building of culverts, from the distribution of food grains, from whatever you have, you expect to become a beneficiary of that particular process. And in those circumstances then, you get into what is known as the winner-take-all culture. That you are in power, you are there to perpetuate your fortunes. The previous tradition of share and giving your opponent a chance so that they can also feed at the trough is progressively done away with. And this means then that whoever is in power cannot afford to lose power. Because not only do you lose your sources of livelihood, but now in the new culture which exists, you may also face dangers of losing your life. So that the vested interest of self-perpetuation and power has now become so insurmountable that it is very difficult to visualize a system where even at the top, if the leadership wants a system of free and fair elections, the individual members of parliament themselves who have become stakeholders in the continuation of power in that particular constituency, in fact have become part of the problem. And not only a problem against the opposition, but against the people in their own party when you are competing for nominations and power over them. It's no accident that if you look at the numbers, most of the intra-party conflicts and killings which have taken place have now taken place in the ruling party itself. You would have got similar figures when the BNP was in power, where you were actually facing contestations and you are willing to kill people for that contestation. So these are the problems which have contributed to the so-called breakdown in the political process. And these are the problems which need to be collectively fixed. That you cannot have a working democracy where the dynamic of accumulation of wealth and the capture and retention of power to perpetuate that wealth becomes the central dynamic of the political process. Bangladesh, at the end of the day, should have been a role model for democratic politics across the world, and certainly within South Asia. Because we had a very unique example that we were a very relatively homogeneous country, both in terms of identity politics, as also in terms of the relative inequalities in the society itself. What has happened is that all this is broken down now, huge inequalities have emerged, and at the end of the day, a new set of identity politics, which did not exist before, has emerged between the two major political parties, where they should have been competing on exclusively policy and political issues, because they did not have, beyond their perspectives on history, fundamental differences on the way in which the systems and the policy should be conducted. After all, both are pro-capitalist parties in the most aggressive sense. I would have difference for that reason with both parties, but they don't have any fundamental difference, and the policies pursued from that point of view by the two successive finance ministers are not that different. After all, you get an agenda originating in the Washington Consensus, and that is the objective reality. That's another problem. So in those circumstances, it should have been much easier to have a consensual political process. But what has now emerged is an identity politics based on two parties which have become so differentiated that it has become virtually tribal. I like to think of the two parties as the Hutus and the Tutsis in terms of the sharpness and the way and violence with which their politics are actually conducted. This was never the case in Bangladesh, and there was no need for that at all. Now, unless these basic issues are addressed, and they have to be addressed collectively and consensually, and the three of you who constitute perhaps the next generation of leadership in politics over here, unless you look to that future, what is going to go ahead is going to be very, very dark, because a notion of perpetuating a broken system motivated by perpetuation in power, not for any greater good, but for material advancement, and for a Hutu-Tutsi type of political culture driving you apart. These, as I said, at the age of 88, I don't have much more to look forward to, but you have a collective responsibility between yourselves. And if you view this responsibility from a purely partisan perspective, then not only will you be doing a great injustice to the people you claim to represent, you will be doing an even bigger injustice to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think it gives us a lot of contextualization as to just what is at stake and just how serious the issues are. This goes beyond an issue of the current coming elections, and really we're talking about creating a functional polity and a functional political system which is going to take us forward in the next decades. And of course the alternative, if we don't succeed, is of course really too cataclysmic for any of us to contemplate. So of course the stakes are very high. With that, I'm going to take it back to our panelists. We'll go in the same order in which we started. Just a couple of minutes if you want to address any of the points which were raised by any of the other panelists or any of the audience. Please go ahead. Sharmeen Appa, we'll start with you.
It's always extremely fascinating to listen to Sir, because the depth of analysis is so important. And you touched upon some of the issues that I raised. Thank you for that. And to that, I just want to add, the problem is not the 61% business character of our parliament, but the fact that these businesses are, or these businessmen, or this business world is linked to the bank defaulters, to the money launderers, and to the black market, and to the black money. And I think that's what corrupts our parliament. The other thing that I want to really say is, having said everything, I did mention this, and I hear the same little, same thing from Sir when he talks about the Hudus and the Tutsis. I think Bangladesh has tribalized its politics. It has splintered its, the parties have splintered. And there is manipulative, conscious effort to splinter these into groups, because the bigger parties want to manipulate support for themselves, and thereby, and we see that happening. We see that happening even right now. So you have little groups of parties emerging who really do not have any, a big support. They're possibly just one man or one woman leaders. So that is also a phenomenon that is happening. And finally, what I just want to say, and this is it, after we've said everything, I want to know from Arafat, he's representing the party in power. We are all waiting to hear from the government how it is going to hold the free and fair election that we are all waiting for. The elections have to happen. Now, if there is so much fear, as already expressed, I myself have talked about it, if there's so much fear, then will that fear lead to not holding a free and fair election? That's number one. Or is it going to be a manipulated free and fair election like 2018? That doesn't go. What are the options before us? If there is no election that is acceptable to the people, and people are very conscious of what's happening, and to the oppositions to agree to, then we have a stalemate and we have a conflicting situation. So is this also an option? And I'm saying this without deep knowledge of the law behind it, but I'm saying this, if things really are so bad that we can't come into an understanding, should we go for this election, or should we take time? Should we take a pause? Should we take time and work out a way, find a group of people, counselors of elders who get together and say, okay, we are not going to walk this road of violence. We are going to look for alternatives. Let's sit with all these parties. Let's facilitate this. We've got to find a way. So is this an option that we can take time, find an answer, then work towards a more peaceful electoral process? Or, as many people have suggested, go for a national consensus where the parties can come together and participate. But I think a violent, manipulated election is just not an option. So we've got to find and as our ambassador said in his opening statement, we need an election, a proper election, to restore our credibility. Bangladesh needs to restore its credibility.
Thank you for those final words. And General Sakhawat.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much giving me floor for a second time. I've been soldier when you said 7 minutes, Mr. Zafar. When you said 7 minutes, I stuck to 7 minutes.
I appreciate
but,
that.
But I found that I was the only person who was out of the step.
That's true.
Anyway, I will not take much time. আমাকে রিকোয়েস্ট করেছে বাংলায় আমার একটা বিষয়টাকে ক্লিয়ার করার জন্য আগে মতো করে নেই। আমি যেটা বলেছিলাম সেটা বলেছিলাম যে আজকে আমরা যে ভিসা নীতি, মোর স্যাংশন কামিং, এসবের পাল্লায় কেন পড়লাম? এসবের পাল্লায় পড়লাম কারণ আমাদের ইনস্টিটিউশনগুলো ফাংশন করেনি এবং আমরা পরবর্তী দুটি ইলেকশন দেখেছিলাম যেটা মোটেও অ্যাকসেপ্টেবল ছিল না দেশে এবং বিদেশে, এবং পিপল হ্যাভ লস্ট ফেথ ইনস্টিটিউশনগুলোর উপরে, সেটা অল দি ইনস্টিটিউশনস, ইভেন পলিটিক্যাল ইনস্টিটিউশনস, যেই কারণে আজকে আমরা এই অবস্থাতে আছি। এবং আমার মনে হয় যে আগামী কয়েক মাস বা মাসও লাগবে না, হয়তো উইদিন 1 মান্থ আমরা হয়তো আরও সমস্যার মধ্যে পড়তে যাব। এটার পিছনে যতই আমরা জিও পলিটিক্যাল কথা বলি আর না বলি, ইটস আওয়ার ফল্ট। আমরা দরজা খুলে ডাকছি অ্যান্ড সেই ডাকার মধ্যে উই আর ইন প্রবলেম। আমি সংক্ষেপে এটুকুই বললাম। আমি দুটো জিনিস এখানে ক্লিয়ারিফাই করতে চাই। অনেক কথা হয়েছে, আমি রুটস কজে যদি একটা যাই, প্রথমে একটু বলি যে মেনি পিপল টক অ্যাবাউট পিআর সিস্টেম। পিআর সিস্টেমে যে ম্যানিপুলেশনটা হবে এটা রোধ করবেন কীভাবে? আপনি 5% যদি বলি যে থ্রেশহোল্ড 5%, আপনি তো 5% ইয়ে করবেন, মানে স্টাফিং করবেন টু গেট 5%। প্রথমে হচ্ছে যে আমাদেরকে দ্যাট সিস্টেম, যে পলিটিক্যাল সিস্টেম, এই ম্যানিপুলেশনটাকে যদি আমরা স্টপ না করতে পারি, কোনো সিস্টেম ইজ নট গোয়িং টু ওয়ার্ক, ওয়েদার ইট ইজ ক্লোজ লিস্ট, ওপেন লিস্ট, পার্টি সিস্টেম, নাথিং। কারণ আপনি যখন বুথ ক্যাপচার করে ফেলেন এবং সেই বুথ ক্যাপচার করার মেকানিজম যদি এভরিবডি হয়, যেটা আমার মনে রেসপেক্টেড প্রফেসর সোহান বললেন, যে এভরিথিং ইউ হ্যাভ ক্যাপচার্ড। লাস্ট ইলেকশনে পিপল হ্যাভ বিন পেইড মানি। কারা? ইলেকট্রাল পিপল, যারা দোজ হু আর কন্ডাক্টিং দি ইলেকশন। ইফ আই এম চ্যালেঞ্জড আই ক্যান প্রুভ ইট। কাজেই কাকে দিয়ে আপনি করাবেন? যে বেড়া খ্যাত খাচ্ছে, বেড়া দিয়েছেন, যে বেড়া খ্যাত খায় তাকে দিয়ে আপনি পিআর সিস্টেম কি করবেন? আমি যেটা বলছিলাম যে উই আর প্রবণ যে আমরা নেপালের চাইতেও যে অবস্থাতে আছি অ্যাজ এ নেশন, আমরা তাদেরকেও ফেস করতে পারি না। মালদ্বীপের 8 লক্ষ 10 লক্ষ লোক, তাদেরকে আমরা দাঁড়িয়ে বলতে পারবো না যে উই হ্যাভ এ বেটার সিস্টেম। এনিওয়ে, আমি দুটো পয়েন্ট এখানে বলছি। ফিক্সেশনের কথা আপনি বললেন, আমাদের ইমিডিয়েট যেটা দরকার, ফিক্সেশন তো অনেক পরের কথা। মিস্টার আরাফাত হ্যাজ টকড অ্যাবাউট ফিউচার, আই এগ্রি উইথ হিম। Why after every 5 years we should get into this kind of problem? Kintu shetar jonno jeta dorkar, would Mr. Arafat recommend to his higher command, call immediate and national consensus meeting with all the political parties. Eta hobe na. Ajke we are in crisis. Amra financial crisis er moddhe jacchi. Ebong agami 1 মাসের ভিতরে probably, if not Sri Lanka, will near about Sri Lanka. কাজী আমরা আপনি যেটা বললেন যে আরেকজনকে দিয়ে যাব তখন সে 1 বছর থাকবে, is it fact, is it good for the country to do it? No. আপনি যদি মনে করেন that you want to get out of this problem, let us have a national consensus right now. আর যদি বলেন যে সময় নাই, সময় আছে, সময় আছে, you go through 123 article 123, probably C or D, I'm not very sure. আপনি dissolute parliament and then have election after that 90 days. You have a lot of time to discuss all these things. আরেকটি লাস্ট কথা যেটা আমি বলবো, আমরা বহুদিন থেকে বলে আসছি, even when we were in election commission, আমরা বহু চেষ্টা করেছি that nomination should not be a elitist problem, not in the methodology of elitism that you nominate. Therefore you find people coming with 6 crore or 7 crore or 8 crore doing business. Bhumidorshu, you are giving all the party, not one party, all the party giving them nomination. We talked about go for inclusive nomination system. No party listen. Therefore, sir, as you are talking about, so conflict of interest is there. So একজন এমপি হতে চায় because he wants to grab more land. এবং একজন challenging a sitting minister, shouting at him. And we have to see this also. একজন মিনিস্টারকে শাউট করছে একজন বিজনেসম্যান এবং আমাদের মন্ত্রী অসহায়, তার রেস্কিউতে কেউ আসেনি। তো কাজে উই হ্যাভ টু ফিক্স দ্য সিস্টেম রাইট ফ্রম দ্য ডে ওয়ান। অ্যান্ড ইফ উই ওয়েট যে আগামীতে করবো, ওই আগামী দিন কোনো দিন আসবে না, বিকজ উই হ্যাভ লস্ট ট্রাস্ট। সো ডু ইট রাইট নাও। থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ।
Thank you very much, General Sakhawat. Dr. Manisha, your final comments.
Thanks for the discussion and all the eminent persons who contributed to this discussion. I would just like to say that the government, if the government wanted to make the democratic institutions stronger, they had 15 years. And in these 15 years, we have seen constantly weakening democratic institutions and fascist government who is just gagging the voices of the opposition parties with laws and with many steps. So we don't really see that the democratic will to build these constitutions in these 15 years. Rather, what we have seen that there is a concept like more development, less democracy. This concept has been preached, this concept has been practiced, and now we are in a fix. And even, what is the people's pulse? We don't want to empower a party, we want to empower the people. And if we want to empower the people, then we have to, I said it before, we have to do some short-term things like we have to we have to take the caretaker government, we have to bring it back in some form and hold a credible election where people believe that they can vote. Even constitutions like Dhaka 17, who have the most elite educated people in the center of Dhaka, there was only 11.5% votes. People didn't come to vote. That is the people's pulse, and this is evident. So we think that to make it credible, we should talk about the caretaker government in some form. And for the long term, we think that PR is a solution for the long-term picture, but immediately, of course, we believe that some form of caretaker government should be brought back. And with that, I end my discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manisha. Tabith, your final words. And I think a couple of questions were addressed to you, so if you choose to respond to them, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Wow, room's getting very serious. We can loosen up. It's okay. I'm not going to take much of your time or the time of this session. Just to get Zafar, you kept saying that we're batting next. But when do we get a chance to bowl? Seems like it's 2 innings of just batting away. You know. So an important guest asked about the 31-point charter of the BNP. And another distinguished guest and friend commented on the implementation of it, or the reality of the 31 points that BNP has put forward. So, first of all, just out of cultural response in a cultural manner, you know, I was asked about, you know, all the sweet talk, can it be managed or not? As I said, culturally, religiously, you can put it, when I was born, it was culturally important for my grandmother to put honey in my mouth. And I think most of the people in this room have the same experience. So I was born with the sweet lips, bro. What can I say? We will talk sweet things. We will continue to say sweet things in a sweet manner. But that does not mean that we're not serious about what we're saying. This 31-point charter was expressed a long time ago. It was distributed to many eminent personalities, research organizations, individuals, and we finalized it based on consensus, consultation first, and then consensus second. Now, what are the few things that are in the charter that is so illogical, or that cannot be achieved, or that should not be achieved? Let me explain a few. First of all, the expenditure of 5% of GDP expenditure on education and health. That is not something that only BNP wants. That is something all of Bangladesh needs. And that is something that many you know, researchers and eminent personalities have discussed, that we need to invest further in education and health. Why there's no consensus on that from the Awal League and the BNP side, I have no idea. But definitely that is a demand and the right of the people at this point. Second is that another point is fair wages. Today we're sitting at a point where 3 times the wage board has deferred a decision on the minimum wage for the garments workers over and over again, pushing it to a point where, again, time will run out, or it will be beyond the wage board's jurisdiction. Why? Why can't we just pay our laborers? Why can't we pay them living wages? Is that so difficult to understand what the rate of inflation is, what the living index is, what the consumer, you know, price hikes are? Based on that, we can come to a consensus, but we are not. And this thing should be seen in a humanistic manner, not in a political manner. Hence, again, I assure you that the fair wages issue can be addressed. It will be addressed, and along with everybody together. One of the major points is that we talk about election. It's so intense because it is a one-person show. The party that wins the election wins it all. The person who's the helm of that party takes it all. And that is why elections become such an important, sensitive, and debatable manner currently in Bangladesh. Had we created a solution where there was a balance of power, had we created a solution where those checks and balances, then a particular election, a party, and a person would not be so important. Everyone's vying after that spot. So in that essence, BNP has proposed the upper house and the lower house system, where there will be general elections, and then based on proportionate votes received, there will be nominations for the upper house from individuals and personality backgrounds. Article 70 amendment, where a person of their own party cannot vote against their own party in parliament. They were voted by individuals of the constituency, yet they cannot go against their own party on many of the issues. So we have addressed to amend that article, not abolish it, amend it. So there are individual members of parliament who can speak what they want and vote as they want. This will again reduce this whole, control or power mechanism within individual parties within the parliament. And the balance of power between the Prime Minister and the President. We have talked about this many times, that the balance of power is extremely important, not just between two offices of Parliament, Prime Minister and President, but also the legislative, executive, and judiciary branches. That is the essence of what we have proposed, and I strongly assure you, everyone, that it's achievable, it will be achieved, and it will be achieved very soon, because nothing here is that what Bangladesh people does not want. And just to address the question directly, yes, this is going to be BNP's, strong part of BNP's in detail manifesto. This will be in BNP's revised vision. Right now BNP has a vision till 2030. When BNP revises that vision for the longer term, it will be again part of that vision. And this will be an ongoing discussion of BNP, whether in government or not, with the people of Bangladesh to see how better we can improve the details and how best we can implement it when the time does come. So that is, I just hope I was able to address many of those issues through the 31-point charter. The other part I'd like to discuss, sorry, I'll be fast on this one, economy. See, economic issue is very vital. Today's economic issue is affected by international issues, but it's completely man-made in terms of our disaster. We have a governor of Bangladesh Bank who has been given the grade D. That is not by the people of Bangladesh. That is by an international community. So we're at the helm of our macro economy, when we don't have the right meritorious people making the right decisions, it is a catastrophe that is man-made. Our distinguished guest, along with the Awami League, is also from PRI. Even PRI has recommended to reduce expenditure, to reduce the printing of money, contain inflation, contain imports. Yet the Bangladesh Bank has done exactly the opposite, which is basically trying to cheapen our source of funds, which is going to accelerate inflation, whether we like it or not. In terms of foreign involvement, I've been very careful in not to mention any international community institutions or countries, except for thanking the Royal Embassy, Royal Norwegian Embassy. And I would like to say that today we have IMF conditions. IMF conditions are absolutely nothing new. It's the same thing that the BNP, financial experts, PRI, CPD, SANEM has been talking about for almost 7 years now. But the Awami League seems to only listen to these recommendations when it becomes an IMF condition and not a recommendation made by the people of Bangladesh for the people of Bangladesh. So no, we don't need international community to help us out, but it seems that the only person or institution that the current regime listens to is the international community. The amendments in the Digital Security Act, again, is nothing new. We've talked about it from the houses of the media, from businessmen, from civil society members, from even the youth of Bangladesh. Nothing was heard, nothing was changed, nothing was addressed. Only when the United Nations finally got involved, the present law ministry spoke to the United Nations. There's a debate on how much recommendations that they've been taken, but there was a change from the DSA to the CSA. Why? Why could we not have made these and better amendments and implementation when we as a Bangladeshi community spoke about it? So these are the issues that we need to address going forward, and we find it very disturbing that we have not addressed them yet. And last but not least, I thank for years and years the civil society of Bangladesh, who's actually always come to the political and economic rescue of this great nation. Whether we talk about 1991, 1996, 2008, today we have present alive in the room as well as outside the room distinguished members of the civil society who also acted as advisors of this country many times. They were there then, and those elections were accepted and taken care of by us. We feel that their guidance and experience can again help us because they're still here. We have a distinguished member who was previous with the Election Commission on this panel. The Election Commission, which Sir was part of, had no questions against them. That election was finally accepted by all parties together, and we moved forward. He's still here. We can take on his experience and we can build on where he left off. So the caretaker system overall in principle works. Maybe it needs some more discussions. And the last is the direct question. Two direct questions were to me that and the last two questions were directed at me is, well, I'll do the second one first. If there's an offer to have a multi-party cabinet at this point, would BNP join it? The straight answer is no, because BNP does not believe in a position that is not people mandated or people elected. And a multi-party discussion is based on what? There are many political parties in Bangladesh who BNP respects and feels they're part of the process. There are many independent individuals who ran for elections in Bangladesh who BNP respects and feels that they're an important part of the process. And there are many parties who are not registered by the Election Commission, and there's no reason why, or there's no ruling in why they're not being registered. One such party member is present in the guest today, Mr. Junaid Saki. So if you want to have a collective effort, we need to involve everybody in the system. not some people, and have like a little backdoor compromise and move forward. That is not something we are willing to do. And genuinely tell me who is the PM of BNP if BNP should form government. We have gone through this even in the last four-year cycle. BNP will decide based on its alliance partners and involvement on who the next Prime Minister candidate will be. BNP will declare an acceptable election process. Prior to that, this is a very serious comment I want to make. Prior to that, strategic reasons is BNP will not declare any more individuals' names who will automatically become subject to more cases, convictions, or even as bad as enforced disappearances. So thank you very much again for everybody for the time that you've given me. Special thank you to Dhaka Tribune and Zafar for the patient hearing that you've given me. And big thanks to the Embassy of the Government of Royal Norway for organizing this once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabith. And so Arafat, I think you get the last word. And there are one or two questions directly addressed to you, but you may address them as you see wish.
Thank you again. Okay, I think I have noted down some points that I thought that I will speak on to give my opinion. First of all, on the wealth statement, there was an opinion here that all the Member of Parliament should publish their wealth statement every year. Even though we have this system right now that every 5 years, if you are again participating in the election, you have to publish your wealth statement, so you can kind of get to see and compare how much it has increased or decreased. But I do also support this idea. Every year it is a good idea, in my opinion. Personally, I believe in that case people can get to track, that if there is any changes happening in the wealth of that particular Member of Parliament. But I also think, along with that, to bring in more transparency in the system, because we talk about corruption and so many other things, lack of governance. So therefore, I think all the registered political party and those who are the members of the Central Committee of those political party, we can also come up with an agreement that all those members should also publish their wealth statement, those who are directly participating in the politics and those who are the member of the Central Committee of all the registered political party. Those who are not registered, we cannot bring them into the regulations. At the same time, I also have another proposal. Actually, this is something that I mentioned long time back. I proposed something like this in the social media, like I think 7-8 years back, to bring in more accountability and transparency in the system. Even for the media people, those who are registered member of press club and different bodies like that, if they can also publish their wealth statement. And those who run different organizations, NGOs, registered NGOs, and all those are the member of the boards of those NGOs, if they can also, all the research organizations, think tanks, if all those organizations, along with the political party, if you can bring into this accountability and the transparent system, I think we can move forward with a much better, system in the country in terms of better governance. So my objective here is to bring in everyone, including myself, to everyone into this transparent process. Because sometimes we see that a kind of a double standard when it comes to demanding governance, rule of law. We want it for others, but when it comes to me or my friends, then we don't want it. So therefore, let's bring in everyone into this process so that we're all on the same page. And this is about the wealth statement. Even though about the wealth statement of the spouse, I have a bit of disagreement on that. It's because, the person who is participating in the election, that person is becoming the MP, but the spouse is not. What if you don't even know and your spouse don't want to let you know how much he or she has, and she or he is also being forced now without getting any benefit of becoming the MP, still being forced. So I think this is kind of a human rights violation on the part of the spouse. So you can think about it, even though it's part of the law. But that's, anyway, so that was on a lighter note. And yeah, that was on a lighter note because, But again, it can happen. The spouse might not want. What if she declines to publish her wealth statement? She might say, then what do you do? Then you are stuck there, right? So there should be some kind of solution.
State over family. Bro.
Yeah.
State over family.
Yeah, true. Another thing that came up in the discussion, that is the call for the national consensus dialogues or something from the government side. But I think, yes, if anything like that comes from the government is good, but even if nothing like that is there, we can still from our own position send out some proposals, give some ideas, what can be done. BNP can send some proposals. From the different civil society organizations, they can also send out some proposals. For example, one of the proposals, we have discussed it now again, Dr. Ashik raised it, that from Awami League, we proposed something, especially for the election time government, that if we can get BNP or the opposition on board, so that, you know, we can build some kind of confidence and create an environment to hold a free and fair election. So that was rejected before, and it is again rejected today. Tabith, with his kind of an excuse and the reasoning that has given, and based on that he rejected it. So fine, but let us think about a bit more and think about other solutions that we may have. Let's put it on the table and discuss. This is not the end of the world. We can discuss more. Okay. Another issue that came up about Dhaka 17 election, I think Manisha mentioned that only 11.5% vote were cast, and so people are not taking interest into elections. I think it's a very, I mean, I have heard this kind of argument even in the television talk shows, and many other people talked about it, but I think it's a very shallow argument in my opinion, because an election with only 5 months to go, people usually do not have interest anyway, and I have seen it myself. An election with full term, 5 years of election, and an election of 5 months, it's a, you know, whole different story altogether. Even in the Western world, in country like Norway or America, even in the US or other democracy, in a by-election like this, you don't even get the candidates, forget about voters. But we have had candidates, and we could manage to get at least some votes. And I tried my best, I worked really, really hard, and I also admitted the target that I set for myself to collect this number of votes with hard work and everything, I failed, and I admitted that publicly. But also, there are other reasons that you have to understand. We had around 325,000 voters in Dhaka 17, but also many people think most of the voters are like, you know, wealthy and elite voter, but that's not true. In the elite area, Gulshan, Banani, Baridhara, Niketan, the total number of voters are around 47,000. Rest of the other voters, they belong to most of the slums. You go to the Kalachatpur, lower income group people, Manikdi, Matikata, all the lower income group people. Most of the peoples are actually, they belong to the lower income group people. And those who belong to the elite class, they do not actually vote much. Their tendencies are not much to vote, even in a good election, the so-called, or the free and fair election. And out of the 325,000 voters, around 60 to 65,000 voters, we didn't see them here. They migrated to different places because they are all floating people living in slums. Many of those people migrated from this area to other area during the COVID, before and after COVID. And how do we know it? Because when you distribute slips, we know exact households, how many voters are there, and then we distribute the slips. So each and every voters, we do that. And then we found out in many households, many voters, they're not there, and those who are still staying in those households, they said they left a year back. So permanent migration happened. So now if you take off those 60,000 and calculate the number of votes that were cast, actually around 20%. So you can give me another example of another election of 5 months duration that could actually gather 20% votes. So I think if we criticize the election, which is a bad one, they should also have the courage to appreciate the election which has been, which all the stakeholders tried their best to run a good election. It should go both ways. Because I know how hard I tried and I worked, and I know what my intention was to try to hold a proper, peaceful and free and fair election. And I wanted my best to uphold all of this, the elements or the components in the environment. Even though some unfortunate event happened, and you all know it, and I was really unhappy and very sad and pissed off with those things happened, and I condemned it. I picked up the phone, called up the law enforcement agency because I was one of the stakeholders, and demanded all those perpetrators needs to be brought to book. And I felt that I got victimized, actually, because 20 minutes before the election, why did that have to happen? Because this didn't make any sense to me, Whoever had done it, I said those people were not my well-wisher or my party's well-wisher. So all of them should be arrested. That was my demand to the law enforcement agency. So what I'm trying to say is, when we, in our own way, try to put this honest effort, could be anything, but the thing is, I don't care. My thing is, the law should take its due course. Everyone should be arrested and should be.
Did they get arrested?
Yeah, 7 of them. The next day, 2 of them. Then gradually everyone got arrested. Not only that, the person who was beaten up, he was taken to the police station, and he was given the opportunity to identify all those perpetrators, and did identify it, and came in the newspaper also. So it went through all the process. Sorry? So basically, what I wanted is that the rule of law to be there, and a proper environment to be there. I asked all of the party activists in Awami League that some people will try to take advantage of the situation and probably provoke or instigate, and don't fall into that trap. Be tolerant and tolerate everything, any kind of provocation. Do not fight back or do anything. But you cannot control everyone sometimes. It happens. This is also part of our culture. And Awami League being such a big political party, there are so many people were there outside the, the centers, especially in the office, and all the sleep distributors. So I did not know personally each and every one of them. This time around, what I'm trying to do is, all those people who were going to be there, helping, facilitating the voters, bringing them to the polling centers and distributing slips and all that, I want to know each one of them. So that I want to make sure I'm recruiting the right people who will also properly behave during the election. So anyway, all I want to say is, if you criticize the election, then you should also appreciate, and put in some good words for the good effort. And that's how we understand that you are actually, honestly, you want some positive change to happen. Okay. The question that when he can vote. Okay. So can I ask you, when was the last time you voted? Yeah, you. That was your question, right? When you can vote. When was the last? You were 20. So when did you become the voter? Like 2 years back? So before that you did not? 18. So like 2 years back you became the voter, right? No, talk about yours. You can speak for yourself for now, because you said when can you vote. Your question was not when your senior friend can vote, right? So my counter question is, you just became voters 2 years back. So I can assure you and guarantee you, whatever the next election, upcoming election, whether it's a local government or national or whatever, go and cast your vote. Go and cast your vote. So don't listen to any of your senior friends. Go and do it yourself. Okay? And see what happens. And then we'll talk. So the পছন্দের মার্কা থাকবে কিনা, তো পছন্দের মার্কাটা যারা নিয়ে ইলেকশন করছে তাদেরকে push them, insist them so that they come to election. And come to election wholeheartedly. Not like 2018. Like they should come wholeheartedly, stay there all the way and put all the effort, full on effort. They should, put in all the effort and invest everything. I'm not talking about money, effort, energy, time to try to win in the election. And if it is there, then you can see a good election. Okay, my last word. I would like to ask Tabith, on behalf of Awami League, Sharmeen Appa said about, I need to say something about the next election, right? So I'm going to say this, that if BNP do not behave like 2014, which is boycotting the election and putting all the effort to prevent the election, resorting to violence and all that. Number one condition, if BNP don't do that. Number two, if BNP don't behave like 2018, which is they come to election just for the sake of it, to show people they're coming in. Rather, if BNP comes to election and wholeheartedly they stay in the election and they get into the electoral process today onward and be there, I can guarantee you and assure you that there will be absolutely and free and fair and credible election. And if people vote for you, you will win, we will hand over power peacefully. But now the question is, do you trust me? No, you don't. And for the same reason, we also cannot trust your 31, whatever that you have given. So trust us first, expect us to trust you. So let us come to some common ground and see how much you can trust each other. Let's talk about it then. Thank you very much.
I think, I think that this has been a productive discussion. I think we have found a lot of consensus and common ground, and I think it's been very hopeful for all of us in this room, and hopefully through the television cameras and the newspapers, this will be transmitted beyond these rooms, because I think if you listen to a lot of the political rhetoric which is going around these days, it's easy to actually feel hopeless. It's easy to feel that there is no consensus, that there's no common ground, that there are no solutions. But I think what we've learned here is that if we work together, solutions are available. I have heard from all of the panelists and even the people in the audience a lot of commonality. One of the things which I think we all agree on is that the system must be saved, that we cannot afford as a nation to continue going down the path we have the last few years. And we have seen a lot of cracks appear in our system. I won't necessarily say that it's broken, but certainly cracks, certainly it is in need of repair, and I think that's something everyone can agree on. And we really have no option. As 2023 turns into 2024, we have challenges facing us as a nation. We have challenges facing us as individuals. We really need to make sure that the political system we have in place is equal to those challenges if we want to be able to be competitive on the global stage in the region, and if we want to provide each and every Bangladeshi with the democratic rights, the developmental rights that each human being should have. Now, one of the things which I heard a number of people say, both in the audience and on the stage, was that, you would be happy to lose the election if you could have some kind of guarantee that after losing the election, whoever came into power, I think this is Arafat's point, that they would have elections again in the next 5 years, and that the system would function properly. And that's something not so dissimilar to what Tabith had said, representing the BNP. And I think Ashiq's point was very good, where he said that, unfortunately no one believes in these words, and this is what it really comes down to. Everyone has a fear of retribution. We have a winner-take-all system. We have a balance of power problem. We have safety. We are all identifying what the problems are. So I think identifying the problems is key to identifying what a solution might look like. And again, getting back to what Dr. Ashiq Rahman said, he said that we have to admit what has gone wrong first. If we don't face up to the problems we have in the past, the problems we have in the present, in the absolute dysfunction we are in right now, you can't fix anything. So I think that is the very first step all sides need to take. And then the second step is to say, okay, let us look at what could possible solutions be. Awami League is saying that the caretaker government is off the table. All right, if it's off the table, well, what would potential solutions be you've mentioned a national government, but I think even more than that, we talked about, this is something which Professor Sobhan mentioned. He said, well, let's talk about the Election Commission, let's talk about the judiciary, let's talk about the civil administration. What steps can be taken in these areas? Let's talk about the police services to give confidence to not just the BNP, but all of the other political parties that a caretaker government would then not be necessary. If you take those steps, then perhaps that is a discussion we can have. And ultimately what we all need to do is we need to look to the future. Perhaps we're not going to solve this problem within the next 3 months. That would be the ultimate solution. But history doesn't end in 3 months. We need to go on. Whoever comes into power, we need to talk about fixing these systems. We need to talk about policy fixes. We need to talk about systemic fixes. And that's a discussion which we can all have. Those of us who are in politics, those of us who are in civil society, anyone who has a stake in the future of Bangladesh, and of course that's everyone in this room and of course everyone outside the room. So once again, thank you all for what I believe was a very constructive and productive discussion. I hope this will be the first of many such discussions all of us will have, and we can kickstart a national discussion or dialogue on this issue moving forward. Thank you very much.